We have Councilwoman Meekum present. I saw your lips move. Councilwoman Fillmore,
Yes, I'm here.
Councilman Ince. I see him present. Thumbs up. And Councilman McEwen, it looks like we have present. Great. Councilwoman Ivy is coming. So welcome to the Centerville work session agenda for October 6th. A very hot October day, probably above average out there. If you're not enjoying it, get out quick because you know how fast weather could change here. It could be 40 the very next day. So
Are you temporarily suspending the meeting?
yeah, golfing sounds pretty good, or hiking, or looking at leaves, whatever, Councilman, that's for sure. So to start, I need to read the disclosure in accordance with Utah Code 52-4-2074 of the Utah Open and Public Meeting Act. I have determined that conducting an electronic meeting of the Centerville City Council with an anchor location presents a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who may be present at the anchor location. This determination is based on the facts and circumstances surrounding the COVID-19 pandemic. Considering the continued number of COVID-19 case counts in Utah, meeting in an anchor location presently presents substantial risk to the health and safety of those in attendance because physical distancing measures may be difficult to maintain at City Hall. And there it is on the screen for you as well. All right, so first item, this is the Parish Lane Marketplace Drive and 400 West intersection discussion. We have UDOT representatives along with staff to discuss two projects, the UDOT SPUI concept and the parish preliminary layout. Okay, and so I'm looking at, I'm guessing, Randy, do you want to introduce our guests, or do our guests just want to start and introduce themselves?
Maybe let me start. We've invited Dave Adamson. He's the UDOT project manager for both the projects. We've invited Chief Bassett as well as Chief Child. They wanted to have some input on some of the issues at these intersections. So we appreciate them being here. About how much time do we have? I saw one other item on the agenda.
45 minutes, possibly could give you an hour. So I don't want to cut this short. Okay,
Okay,
we do have representatives here. How much time do you need? And sorry, Kevin, I didn't recognize you as Cody.
Oh, you're fine.
So,
I'm here with Cody Peterson from my office, and
how much time you looking at, Kevin?
I think 45 minutes will be great. I should have sent out an agenda, but basically what I'd like to do is I'm going to give an overview of the project, kind of an update on the schedule. Then I'd like Cody to give an update on the alignment and maybe some of the traffic data. Then I'd like Dave Adamson, if he'd take a few minutes to give UDOT's perspective on why we would like to combine the projects together and what some of those benefits will be. And then I'd like the department heads, Chief Child, Chief Bassett, and Randy to take a few minutes each to weigh in on the importance of this project, give their perspectives. And then we'll have maybe 15 minutes or so to hopefully answer any questions or concerns. Does that sound all right?
Go for it. Sounds fabulous.
Okay, great. These two projects, 400 West was applied for in 2017, improvements at the intersection, and funds were received of about 1.8 million. And then in 2018, we applied for marketplace improvements at Parish Lane, and funds were received of about 1.4 million. So combined, that's about 3.65 million, and the city's match is about 230,000. These funds are what we call CMAQ. CMAQ stands for congestion mitigation and air quality. And so these funds are from the U.S. Department of Transportation, administered by the Federal Highway Administration. And it's a funding source. Many of you might know this, but I just wanted to review it. But this is a funding source for state and local governments for transportation projects to help meet the requirements of the Clean Air Act. And the CMAQ funding is available only in areas where, in order to reduce congestion and improve quality for areas that do not currently meet the national air quality standard for ozone, carbon monoxide, and particulate matter. And so that's just kind of a background info of where the funds came from. Again, the city council and city management decided back in 2017, 2018 to apply for these funds. It's kind of similar to what the Ferguson Group might be doing, going after different federal funds, different federal programs. So I wanted to give that basis that this is based on air quality improvement and congestion mitigation, not necessarily volume of traffic or trying to get numbers of cars through. It's to reduce idling, and that's what the funding is based on.
Kevin,
So,
I have a question.
yes.
I'm just wondering if the air quality measurements being problematic was based specifically on this location or just the Wasatch Front as a whole, do you know?
It's the Wasatch Front in general, and then this project received the funds because of the number of cars idling, number of cars basically waiting at the signal. But the air quality measurement, I believe, is along the Wasatch Front in general.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yes. Our objectives kind of tonight is again to give a project schedule update. But also we'd like to really focus in on why there's a need to combine the two projects. We've spoken with WFRC, Ben Withrich as the chair, and Dave Adamson. We feel that both projects were scheduled to be built in 2022 and 2023. But in meeting with the group, we feel that there's a lot of benefits, both cost-wise and also just basically interruption to try to construct both projects in the year 2022. So that puts our schedule. We've got to get going on the environmental report documents. We've got to design the project in 2021. And then that would put construction of both intersections, they would be bid together, and construction in 2022. I'm going to give Cody, turn the time over to him for 5 minutes. Cody, just by way of introduction, he has his professional traffic operations engineering license. That's kind of a separate civil engineering license that he's obtained. And so anyways, he's been with us for 10 plus years, but I wanted him to go over one of the main concerns in the last work session was the Dairy Queen corner and that alignment. And so I want him to go over the new proposed alignment. This is not set in stone. This is still a work in progress, but I wanted him to share what the new updated alignment was and how we're trying to lessen the impact on the Dairy Queen corner.
And it looks like, Mayor Wilkinson, would it be okay if we shared a document over the screen?
You betcha. City Recorder, can you allow him to share? Do you have the ability now?
Oh, there we go.
Okay, perfect.
So here's the new, kind of the new layout. I know we had a previous meeting with the staff. You know, there was concern about how much we can start at 4th West. There was concern about encroaching onto Dairy Queen's site. When we first start to lay out an intersection, we try to use, you know, the existing right-of-way that's there. And then when we have to add more lanes, which is needed on both the city streets and on UDOT streets, then we just have to make sure that those lanes line up in order for traffic to move safely across the intersection. So we try to initially not affect any of the right-of-way. So as you can see on the southeast corner by Chili's, hasn't really been affected. And we used the basis for our design this time and on the corner of Dairy Queen. And we've basically designed around their sign to give them, it's about 3 feet of landscape area on either side of their property. And then we just align everything in the intersection to line up with that.
So yeah, if I could interject, just
Yeah.
what we've tried to do is not take out any of their drive-through. That was one of their main concerns when we met with the owners of Dairy Queen, is they did not want to impact their drive-through. They sometimes park a truck alongside there to maintain their sign. They like to also be able to keep their drive-through open. So that really is the main difference, is we've shifted everything to the west, which means more take on Zion's, more take on the America First corner, but it really preserves the Dairy Queen corner and drive-through about as much as we can. Continue on.
Yeah, if we were to anymore, it would affect into Zion's pull through and to America First pull through. So I think we have the best of both worlds there. We saved all of Dairy Queen's area and inside their parking lot and their drive-through, and we haven't touched on any America First or Zion's drive-throughs.
Taking was mainly the landscaping, was it not, on the west side of both those?
Yes. Yep, all that was landscaping. That's right, Randy. And then the same idea down at Marketplace. We try to minimize the impacts on the corners, mainly because property and having to redo sidewalk and then curb and gutter can add up to be pretty expensive. So on this layout, the south leg and kind of the Chevron and the IHOP areas kind of stayed the same. And then in order to get the dual left turns going north, we have to get into the MTC's property a little bit. And in this case, we just take the 2 lanes all the way up past Chick-fil-A and end at the new Hive development site.
But the improvements only have to go, the improvements in widening are the heavy lines. So the widening just needs to go through maybe the north property line of the MTC.
Yeah.
And doesn't, we're not widening the road into the Chick-fil-A piece.
Nope.
That can be done with just striping. Is the concept for now.
Yeah, yeah. So that's the basis of our design, at least alignment wise. Just briefly on the traffic, you know, the city's initial look was to try to help, you know, congestion on these south roads on the city streets, get people in Marketplace to be able to turn left and people off of 4th West to turn left. And the traffic counts merit that. anything above 240, the highway capacity manual says, you know, you can consider dual left turns to help alleviate stacking of traffic, try to get them through the light faster. So in presenting that with the city, UDOT has a similar issue. And I don't know if you guys can see that. These are just some typical traffic numbers on a Tuesday afternoon. These turns, so at Marketplace, for example, there's 438 turns in the PM hour. At the same time, there's 343 turns going on to Fourth West. And then just for comparison, there's 447 that go onto Main Street. And so in UDOT's case, on their roads, they also need some help getting turns, making those movements. So that is the reasoning for the additional lanes. That will help get those turn movements through the intersection, keep the congestion down, and the overall air quality improved is the main idea and the reason that we received the funding.
Yeah, so one thing that has to happen is these projects have to be rated high enough in order to receive this funding, and the studies that were done with the prior numbers and what the future numbers will be made it so this project was available, the funds would be available for this project. It qualified for that funding source.
So what you're saying, Kevin, is it rated high enough to be able to do it in 2022 with that funding source?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
That's all I have.
Okay,
Unless
so
there's any other questions,
yeah,
but we can take
maybe if
questions
we
at the
can
end.
go to the department heads. Well, in particular, let's go to Chief Bassett and then Chief Child and then Randy. And I'd like to have them weigh in for a few minutes on some of the issues they see at these intersections. Is Chief Child there?
Yes. Chief Bassett or Chief Child, which one's going first?
I'll go first.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Council, for the opportunity. I just wanted to just kind of express some of the discussion that we've had when we installed the light on 1250 West in Parrish. When that light was installed, the city worked with us and installed an Opticom system at that light. The Opticom system is a preemptive signal that is sent from all of our apparatus, ambulance and fire apparatus. When their lights are on, it sends a infrared signal to the traffic light to cycle the traffics so we get a green so we can continue through the intersection. We have the Opticom system on a significant amount of traffic lights in our district in totality. On Parrish, the only location we have this Opticom system is on 1250 West. And it was installed because it was a new light. We, in the discussion that I brought up and with staff is, you know, if we're gonna look at installing new traffic signals on these two intersections, I would ask that we also install the Opticom system. As you know, our Centerville station is our second busiest station, and we are frequently on the freeway, and having to route down Parrish is quite a problem, especially with the new center median, not the new, but with the center median. As apparatus are traveling westbound on Parrish, they have to make a judgment call right before, you know, right about Dick's Marketplace, if they're going to go into oncoming traffic or if they can make the access with Parrish. Generally, because of the traffic load, we cannot get through Parrish Lane through those intersections. So generally speaking, into oncoming traffic from about Dick's Marketplace, Dick's grocery store to the freeway, which is pretty, dangerous. So one of the things that I was just asking for is, as we look at these proposals and these projects, if we could just think about the ability to install the Opticom system on those signals in a four-way, which means it's on all four directions, that would really help with our response times. Whether it's an ambulance coming into the city and they're coming from another station, maybe using the freeway, or us trying just to get down to Target on a medical. Parish is very busy, very congested. And again, these signals definitely improve our response time and our response to those in need. That's all I had, Mayor.
So Kevin, would you take note of that and maybe find out what the additional cost would be? Chief, I would ask you the question. That would solve, if we did that, that would solve 400 West and Market. But what about the two lights on the two sides of the freeway bridge?
Right. We would still, anywhere that the upgrades are being made, I would ask that we could utilize those upgrades in the new features. If there's not a new feature, we would ask to look at what we could do to improve it and add it. I know that we can add Opticom to existing lights. We've done that before, and it would just really help us out. Parish is, I mean, we all know how Parish is. It's just so busy, and it's a challenge to get our emergency vehicles up and down Parish.
Okay, thanks, Chief.
Thank
Chief
you.
Child?
Mayor.
Yeah, I'm here now. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
I had my headset on backwards and the mic didn't want to come down behind my head and work very well. So, no, I appreciate all the work that's being done on this. I support it. I think this is definitely needed, and it's good to see the timeline moving up. And DOT taking recognition that there's a problem here. The Chief Bassett is correct in that that road is becoming increasingly congested, especially during the afternoons, weekdays, and on Saturday. There are times when it can be backed up all the way to around Arby's, one stop going westbound. We've all driven through there. We know that that can be a real problem. As far as responses go, my units and Chief Bassett's apparatuses are constantly using Parish Lane as a way to get to the west side for calls for service. If you always take a risk if you go over to Page's Lane to try to go west and go through West Bountiful, because there may be a train coming and you may be stuck there for a long time. So Parish Lane is going to be your best bet, but with the series of lights down there and the center divider the way it is, it can be real challenging and dangerous in some cases trying to get through all that, trying to get to the west side. So I've been looking at what's being proposed. I think it's an excellent idea. It's good to see that the roads are being aligned at 4th West, the north side and the south side. It makes sense to me to take the extra ground from the west side. So I agree, we need to try to preserve Dairy Queen area for their drive-through. The need is especially important for that particular entrance into the Dairy Queen and Quick Quack. Whereas on the west side, they've got a little more wiggle room there. And as mentioned, we're going to get into landscape versus functionality of the property. So that looked really good. Yeah, I think that's all I've got.
Thanks, Chief. Randy, you're up.
Okay, one of the things I'd like to talk about is the importance of doing them both at the same time. It not only will save the state and us money, it'll also, I think, be helpful for the citizens. For example, putting in and changing the signals at the same time can be poured at the same time, so you don't extend it twice. You pour the two signals and then you change them, so you're not keeping traffic for long periods of time during a whole nother setup and takedown. Your curb and gutter, some of the alignments may have to be changed after. If you did them separate, you may end up with some alignments, and even the park strip in the middle may change. Eventually the island will end up being taken out with this project totally. And so you get a better finished product by doing it all together and getting it done at one time rather than extending it out. So I think you can do it faster than trying to have them separated, because it's such a short area. They can do a lot of the work while people are traveling through it. And it's not just in the roadway, but even behind the sidewalks and those types of things. So I think it makes a lot of sense to do them together. Also, this is in harmony with what will help when they change the freeway overpass, when they change our off-ramp and so forth. This is what they would require, is to have these two intersections with two left lane going northbound and the westbound one. The one that was at Fourth West was planned in when they actually did Target. We knew that Target and also Walmart would require two left turn lanes. So there was enough right away pretty much taken at that time, although they've shifted a little bit. So we knew that was going to happen. So I think it's a great opportunity to improve those intersections. We know they get backed up, especially on the weekends, really bad. So we need some outlets putting people to the north, both at 4th and at 8th. So I'm glad to see that the state wants to do it together. When we did Main Street, we had the same problem. They came to us after looking at both eastbound and the northbound turning west. They decided that it was warranted and more economical and much safer to do the whole project at once. So I'm very much in favor of making sure that we do both projects at the same time. Same thing for doing all of the environmentals. Just we'll do all of them right now, get them done, and move on with the project and get it out of our way next year. So that's my feeling.
Thanks, Randy.
Let's have Dave Adamson, if he's there, if he would also, I don't want to skip over him. We appreciate him being here. Again, he's the UDOT project manager for both projects. And go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, I mean, I'm basically going to reiterate what Randy said and what you've already said previously. I think doing them together, there'll be economies of scale. You'll get a better price. I think a big component of doing them together is the impact to, and you've already stated this already, the impact to the citizens. If you do them one after the other, year after year, I think your citizens will not be happy. It's kind of like pulling the Band-Aid off quick. Just do it all, get it done, and move on. But if you have continuous road construction every summer, I think that may not go over very well. So I think you'll get a better price. Like Randy said, you'll get a better product because you won't have to patch something in the second year with the second project, and you'll have happier citizens. So I think,
Dave,
go ahead.
To your point of impact, I'm just wondering where these sections are already completely at failure, and then we're closing off areas to do the work. How's that even going to be handled?
It won't be pretty. Because there's so much traffic, there'll be constraints on the contractor. They won't be just shut it down. We'll have to look at that as we get closer to the project and with the city and determine what kind of capacity or what kind of lanes still need to be left open at all times, or when they can close certain lanes down. And that's something we look at real close as we get closer to advertising a project or letting a project out, is looking at traffic counts to make sure that it'll be impacted and the city will be impacted. But we'll look at minimizing that as much as possible, but still allowing the contractor to get the project done.
Another question that I have is how much lightening of the load is expected with the West Davis corridor exit on Glover's? Is that expected to significantly impact this area?
I can't answer that. I haven't looked at any traffic numbers with respect to that. I mean, I assume that more people will take Legacy, possibly. You're talking with regard to I-15, right?
Yeah,
Well,
but with not having a Farmington exit until 200 West. I think that we carry quite a lot of the South Farmington traffic
I get what you're
at
saying.
these lights. And so I just wonder if they'll end up taking Glover's. But
Yeah, and I'm
that's
trying
for
to
the
remember West
future.
Davis Highway. West Davis Highway is not adding another interchange, is it? I don't think it is.
One of the problems too, they're
Yeah.
going to be adding more lanes in 4 to 5 years going north of Parish Lane. So it's actually getting worse. They're going to widen to the east and add more lanes all the way down to where they make the flyover. And so it's only going to get wider and more traffic.
I guess
Not
that's
less.
my
On which road?
question is, I mean, I guess that's my question, really my bottom line question is, we're carrying 1.5 cities worth of traffic freeway on and off. And so I know this has been a long time discussion, right? But are there any future solutions to that? Or are we just going to have to, because our businesses aren't going to be able to continue, there isn't space there to continue to host more and more lanes and width.
Yeah, width, when you don't have the length, width doesn't really help you. So we could widen that road out to 10 lanes, but because of weaving motions, especially right now, if you're going northbound on I-15 and want to turn left, to weave over right now, it's difficult, right? I mean, so when you have tight constraints that we have there with the freeway and those two intersections being so close, going wider with your road doesn't necessarily fix it. And so there'll be hopefully there's some innovative solutions when the Parish Lane interchange is reconstructed. I know that a few years back, we did a study, and there were some innovative ideas that came out of that to maybe try to take some of that northbound traffic, traffic going north of the city or North City or into the South Farmington, take that out of kind of offline and put it up onto the frontage road. So there may be a solution there that helps move some of that traffic out of those intersections and moves it up to, puts it onto the frontage road farther to the north.
We can also,
go ahead, Randy.
I was going to say 1250 West is another thing. We're really pushing, trying to get 1250 so that we actually have another direction for people to go to get to Farmington so that they can go west of the freeway. I think that'll be an added help. And we've got very good support trying to get the state to try to help us with that.
1250 West and interchange there, 1250. Is that what you're saying, Randy?
No, well, we already have the interchange. It's tying it all the way to Farmington to the high school.
Okay.
The state's going to give us the right of way along the Legacy to put in our road so that we'll connect 1250 with 650 and 650. I think that's added. That will be an added north-south corridor.
Yeah, Randy's spot on. That's really a key project for us because it gives us another frontage road west of Legacy that connects to South Farmington. And so that's really the next key piece for us is to get that 1250 West extended into Farmington, and basically an additional frontage road.
That will help. I mean, we're constrained with geography right here with respect to, those intersections being so close to the freeway, and it's really difficult to do anything about that now. We have that all the way along Davis and Weber County, especially where we have luckily your Main Street is about a mile away from the freeway. There's sections up through Layton and Weber County where Main Street is right next to the freeway. And it's problematic for us all the way up through when you have that much traffic and so little space between major roads like that. So, I mean, I don't know if this will help. These projects will help move traffic through there. During construction, it will get a little messy, and it'll be impacts. We'll look to lessen that and put constraints on the contractor so they don't close things down too hard while they're doing the construction. But during construction, it will be impactful. But if you do it in one season, at least it's over and done in one season. I assume we can do it in one season. I think, Cody, can't we? I think we can.
I think we can.
Then we're over and done in one season, and then then the citizens can have better access.
I do want to tell you that we met with the state every time we have projects, and we go over anything that will be happening during the summer. For example, the 4th of July, They've put restrictions on the contractors so that they don't screw up our 4th of Julys or those types of things. The state has worked very well with us to try to accommodate those things that might be problematic throughout the year and put those into the bid schedule so they recognize those might be days they can't work.
Fortunately, Randy, with this area, it lends itself perfectly to midnight milling, you know, because of the way that district operates. Because
Yes.
if your first left turn is going to be Main Street, you know, if these projects are underway at the same time, or we're trying to fight with congestion with one lane with the weaving that goes in there right now, or possible lane closure, I could see traffic backing up into the freeway at that point. So it's gonna have to be one of those midnight jobs.
That's exactly
then-
my question, is if any of these projects ever occur where the construction always is just happening overnight.
Last year's project, most of it was done at night.
Yeah,
A lot
one
of
thing
it-
about these projects too is that a lot of the work is shoulder work.
Yeah.
So a lot of the times they're keeping the turn lanes open and then they're doing their shoulder work, they're widening the concrete work, placing the new pole, getting it all up and close to running before they make the switch over. So there's not going to be a lot of excavation out in the middle of the intersections. It's going to be, if you notice the footprint, most of it's on the corners and then extending along the edges for the widening. But there will be obvious disruption. There's no doubt about that.
Kevin, one thing I would like us to give consideration to as we move this project forward, I think if you're a driver who's headed north on Frontage Road in the evening, you've probably come close to clipping a pedestrian stepping across between the Chick-fil-A or the McDonald's. We get a lot of buses that park along there, or RVs or other things that park on the roadside and then run across the street. So as we're increasing the traffic there, we need to look at whether we need a signaled crosswalk or some other means, because the visibility is horrible. I've come close to hitting a couple teenagers. I just know to slow down if I see a school bus parked at either one of those restaurants, that somebody is coming across that street because they don't like the fare where the bus is parked. But that's not only the case, you'll also just see regular pedestrians just take off across that road.
That's such an important point,
that's-
George. Yeah.
Very good comment. I think
Yeah.
that needs to be studied and to see if a signalized crosswalk ought to be placed there,
Yeah.
because there will be an additional lane. So there will be added width. There'll be 2 lanes northbound instead of the 1, which will add to the safety issues. Great
Yeah,
comment. Thank you.
I would agree with that as well. That I think a signalized crossing there would be the right way to handle that, because there is a lot of traffic, a lot of foot traffic, just running across the road right there, and it's on that corner, and cars are coming around pretty fast, and again the visibility isn't so good. So yeah, for sure.
Yeah, you get a bus and half of them want to go to Chick-fil-A and the other half want to go to In-N-Out. And so they're scampering across there.
Yep,
I've
and
seen it as well.
yeah,
Well, no, no.
I just see that as a bad thing where we've got 2 cars, only one's going to see them.
And they're not following that crosswalk that's there all the time either.
No,
Well, that's a problem.
kids are like water; they'll take the path of least resistance. So that's going to be the challenge for Kevin and team: is where do you place that they're actually going to use it, or if nothing else, the drivers have enough visual warning that, hey, you need to be careful coming around this corner because there's going to be a pedestrian.
Yeah, we ought to study, look at whether it maybe ought to be moved to where it's, most of those folks, it seems like they're going over to In-N-Out. So maybe it ought to be placed on the other corner so that they're going directly from MTC or Chick-fil-A over to the In-N-Out corner. Yeah, that definitely needs to be looked at.
Or you're going to have more people over there with Hive trying to get across there as well. With the trailer park right now, it's all fenced off, so they can't really go that way. But once you get Hive in, you're going to have all those people in there and that office building. So again, you're going to have more people trying to cross there, trying to get over to In-N-Out and McDonald's.
Good point, Chief.
Any
Kevin, are
other
you fielding
questions?
questions still? Is that what we were doing right now, or did you want to talk about that other project?
Any other questions or concerns? It looks like we have, if we want to leave 15 minutes, our time might be up, but
Can we see the picture again for a minute?
Yeah.
Kevin, I want to give you another 15 minutes because this is critical. The other topic we can cover another time.
okay, yeah, I think let's open it up to discussion and questions from the group.
So what, I'd prefer the larger version if possible. I'm
Oh,
trying
sure.
Now,
How about that? Is there an intersection you're looking at or a spot?
if you kind of center it between the two of them.
Yeah.
So we're ending up with 8 lanes going at the intersection from Marketplace to the west, 7 north, and then 7 into 4th West, and 6 out of 4th West.
So the dual lefts, maybe this will help. The dual lefts are only warranted at both intersections in the east direction and in the north direction. So those dummy lanes in the west direction and the south direction are just that. They're not needed so if we go to the traffic data and look at the number of peak PM movements, they're really warranted at both intersections in the north and the east directions, not in the south or the west direction.
I acknowledge totally that I am not a traffic engineer, but I will tell you that I continue to believe that I wait more and people wait more at the Parish Lane Main Street intersection with the dual lanes because you do not have optional left turn once the traffic clears than before. And we're not Sandy, we're not that big. This looks to me to be overwhelming. I mean, we're going from 5 to 8 lanes going east into the marketplace.
Yeah, so that design is to match up with what UDOT's future design potentially could be. So the rendition they have now to upgrade the intersection at I-15 has this amount of lanes coming off it. So we said, well, we'll just match it now. Plus it'll help improve everything. Trying to get more people to get on the frontage road, try to help that weaving action that Dave talked about as we're trying to go west, and then to get cars off a marketplace so they're not all backed up.
Yeah, we have the numbers at the Main Street Parish Lane job, but we've got the photos too. But really eastbound at Main Street and Parish in the peak PM would back up past Little Caesars at times. In the northbound direction, it would back up past the post office.
But you're talking about an hour a day, and there's 23 more when it's backing up because they can't do optional left turn.
Yeah, that's what the air quality program is based on. Is it's based on that peak AM and peak PM time for an hour or two during the day, and trying to mitigate and reduce the emissions during those peak hours. So you're right. You're exactly right. This entire intersection is designed for 1 or 2 hours out of the day. That's
You could add lunchtime in there too. Lunchtime's pretty bad.
or yeah, maybe sometimes on Saturdays when it gets backed up.
You know, Mr. Entz, I think this would probably be a good word to get into UDOT, who controls the signal, and they can help with some of those timings. They're always trying to improve timing, because the best way to improve traffic is to improve the timing at the signals.
That's exactly what I was going to say, Bill, is that I
Yeah.
agree with your assessment, except for that really can get fixed with if the cameras are set, or whatever system they use to sense the cars that are there, if that's set to be sensitive. Like I leave from Maine onto Parrish at 5:15 in the morning on Tuesdays. And it's so annoying, you know, when those aren't set right, and I'm sitting there because there are no cars there. But when they are set right, it'll just switch for me right off the bat.
Yeah.
So.
And yeah, so we've worked, Carrie Jacobson runs that up there, or her and Darren Fristrup, and they love to improve those kinds of things. That's one of their goals. So we should put a word in and see if they can adjust some of those, and see how it improves that intersection for sure.
Well, and so one of the big problems in that intersection on Main Street is the fact that you cannot make so you can't make a right hand. I want to be able to make my arrow go on your thing. You come down Parrish Lane, but you can't turn towards Farmington because they've put the stupid the thing in the middle that looks like the rocket ship. So it's taking up that room. So you are stuck. If the light is red, sometimes after school, literally cars back up through the crosswalk, which is so dangerous there at the school. But because cars can't go down there and turn north, and I don't know what the answer to that is, but they made the big painted island there so that you can't be in it, which to me somehow should have been adjusted over to where you could have cars. So maybe it's more effective 1 hour from 7 to 8, but when you've got school, it's a mess. I mean, after school, you have cars backing up clear through the crosswalk because you can't turn right, or you can't turn north.
So unfortunately, in order to line up those dual lefts, you have to have a blank line there in order for cars to safely travel through the intersection. The second thing is, in order to not impact Hainsworth's property, we couldn't put a dedicated right turn in. So unfortunately, those are the factors that play into that. And it's
what they let us do on that intersection is they let us have an offset of about, I think, a maximum of 2 feet.
Yeah.
So through the intersection, those double lefts are skewed maybe 2 feet from the dummy lane and the westbound left. But to skew them any more than that, UDOT feels that that's unsafe. But Cody's exactly right. We would have had to take maybe another 10 or 12 feet off the south line of Hainsworth in order to get a dedicated right turn lane, which was not really an option at the time.
Yeah.
You know, back to the 400 West and the marketplace, we had a work session some time ago, which you referenced, Kevin and Cody, of moving it over to where it would impact on the west side, since it would be less impact. Now, as Councilman Ince said, I'm not a traffic engineer as well. You guys are. You're civil engineers. This is your field. We know that something has to be done. There has to be a certain level of trust that you've responded to our comments and what we asked you to do, and have put something together that appears, without being an expert in this field, that will work. I think, you know, the ideas may come in the future, but I think we know, all know something has to be done, and that just gets worse as they talk about with the new interchange being put in and that type of thing. And so I'm seeing it, you know, you may find tweaks here and there, but I'm seeing it, to my knowledge, is a great option right now.
Yeah, really your only other option for these types of intersections, if you want to flow more traffic through them, is back at Main and Parish, we entertained the idea of a roundabout. Mayor Russell at the time brought that up, but the roundabouts for these large of intersections, you know, you'd have 2 lanes going around, but sometimes the footprint can be even larger, and you're taking larger corner clips. And UDOT's probably not going to be in favor, but really the double lefts is kind of the practical, the kind of the go-to solution for these types of congestion issues. One more comment too is that really for this interchange to happen, these 2 intersections need to be improved.
Right.
Otherwise, when the interchange comes online, you know, 5 to 10 years from now, whenever that is, the comment was made that, you know, we would back up. Maybe that was during construction, but these intersections literally would back up onto I-15. And so it's kind of, that's why the funds were granted. That's why the federal and UDOT are behind the project. I do think it's important to take a look at safety as well with the police chief and Chief Bassett. I think that those are important issues as well, obviously, other than just congestion mitigation.
But Kevin, even with roundabouts, you're going to have lights going into there. If there's people coming off of 400 Western, they're going to be able to turn, right? You'd have to have lights at all 4 entry points to the intersection, entering the roundabout, wouldn't you?
I don't know if you'd need lights, but it would need, there's so much traffic, it needs a special consideration to make sure there's enough gaps for people to enter.
Yeah.
So that's what you're relying on, is there's enough gaps in that circle so everyone can get in. If there's not enough gaps, then one direction is backed up pretty far. So
yeah, it's not a real practical second solution in this case, nor would UDOT entertain it, but that's kind of the next go-to idea in these situations.
Or get everyone to ride their bikes and take the bus.
Were you going to say something, Robin? I think you're on mute.
Robin, did you have something or no? No?
Oh,
Okay.
Okay.
And roundabouts even cause a situation that they have to be redone as well too. 38 years later, when I went back to England, roundabouts had kind of failed, and they had to do upgrades to the roundabouts as well too, as traffic increased as well. So,
I am personally very opposed to roundabouts. I don't think that Americans know how to drive them.
Well, they're not good for pedestrians. They're really bad for pedestrians. UDOT doesn't want to do them where you've got heavy pedestrian traffic.
That's a good point too.
Yeah, they have been shown to be a lot less safe.
So what other comments, council or anyone else? Did you want to talk about that other one at all, or just leave that for us to look at as far as the interchange?
That's mainly just for reference, so you can kind of see a concept of what the state plans to do. We've heard it anywhere from 5 to 10 years. They haven't put a year on it, but that's kind of just for reference on what their concept was a few years ago. That could change, but they think the SPUI, the single point interchange is the best option. So.
Okay, thanks. Anything else the council needs to know, or did you lay it out on the line, Kevin and Cody and Dave? And
Well, just on the SPUI review, can you remind us what the time frame is on that? And then I'm just curious if it's going to affect what's being done here at Marketplace Drive, and things will get redone differently at that time.
The time frame on that, we've been told, is 5 to 10 years out. I do think that they've started to begin looking at the environmental a little bit, but that's the best we know, is that we're out ahead of that project by several years at least. So that's the best time frame we've been given, is 5 to 10.
Yeah. As far as design's concerned, Tammy, this layout and design will correspond with whatever they put in new, and should work together. So we don't anticipate needing to upgrade or improve the intersections with the new interchange.
all right, thanks. Tammy, any other questions on that, or you good?
Hey, Kevin, Paul Child. So when we talked with UDOT and the SPUI and accommodating a dedicated right-hand turn for westbound traffic to get on northbound, and we had talked about widening Parish east of the frontage, between Market and the frontage. Is that being accomplished with this plan?
Yes, if you'll notice that lane that's been added along what's going to be the Bank of America site, the old Iggy's site, that lane, that far north lane, accomplishes that, and it coincides with that concept of the SPUI. So yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So one of the main things, again, we were hoping to accomplish, and maybe this will be at a future city council meeting, we can have another work session if we need to, but is we'd really need direction on whether or not we can combine the projects. That, again, we have WFRC support, we have UDOT support, and the city agrees that it would be best for the city to combine the projects. The funding's in place, and WFRC is willing to bump up the funding for the Marketplace intersection a year so that it can be done together. And so that's really kind of the next step. And then we can still meet and talk about alignment issues, different safety items. Those can still be worked through, even up through the design all of next year. We want to get the alignment somewhat solidified before we start the environmental process, because we don't want it changing too much, because we have to go through and contact each property owner that's impacted. So again, that's kind of the next step, is given the go ahead to combine the projects.
Okay, so Kevin, you say funding's in place. You said the city did have some share as well too. That's obviously a smaller share. In these work sessions, we don't normally vote, so, but, the funding, the combining of the projects, however we need to handle that, we'll get that taken care of, but makes sense to me.
And it's bumping Marketplace forward to match 400, not bumping 400 backward, right?
Correct.
Okay, so I mean that's great. Yeah, for all the pros that you listed otherwise, but then also just getting Marketplace done sooner is fantastic.
Yeah.
I don't want to move us backwards too much in the discussion, but could I just see the numbers screen again? I just know that also at traffic time, getting onto the freeway, Parrish is backing up an extraordinary amount.
Yeah, so
I'm just wondering, I wanted to look more closely at what that's at right now, because when Robin brought up the issue with the right turn onto heading north on Main, and how terribly that right hand lane backs up, we're going to be experiencing still the same thing of those who want to turn right on to 400 West. And I know that we can't widen for a right turn lane there because of Dairy Queen. Can we go down there?
right.
But I mean, we've been experiencing extraordinary backup, like in the evening time to get on the freeway. And I don't see a solution to that issue here.
Yeah, this is at least a little different in that you do have the exclusive through lane, and then you have the shared through lane and right turn. So it does have one additional lane than westbound Parrish at Main.
But that's going to be the same as it is now, isn't it?
Yeah.
One through lane and one shared, and it's really a big problem now.
Yeah. What we're hoping, and we could show that with a simulation, is that with this turn lane at Marketplace that goes north, this will open up and be extended so more people can get in there and get up to In-N-Out or Chick-fil-A or wherever they're going.
Okay.
Hopefully that will help open up room for more people to get west, along with the additional lane will help some of that weaving. So maybe some of these lanes will be better utilized and more people can get through.
Do we not have an exclusive right turn lane at Marketplace right now?
We do have, it'll still remain an exclusive right turn lane. And that's just because the counts are so high. There's
But
kind
you're
of
just saying but are you saying that by scooting back, I guess I don't understand how you're saying in this design that's going to help that westbound traffic at all.
Yeah, so by opening up this west side a little bit, for example, this turn lane here at Marketplace, you get in it about right here. And then the rest of the people who want to turn right back up into the through lane. Now that turn lane will be opened up because this now meets the standard. Plus there'll be some of the shoulder, and then more people will be able to get through who want to go through and out of the way of, and the people who want to turn right get out of the way of the people who want to move through. There's a little advantage there. The next
Just the
advantage,
fact that got scooted back a little.
yes. Yep. Now the
Okay.
turn lane is longer and can hold more people, get them out of the way of the people who want to go through.
But
The
that
Is
other-
there
only
any way it could be lengthened even more and just have a sign up earlier saying, you know, if you're in this far most lane, that would be, or is that just as soon as it gets wide enough?
Yeah, so what people will tend to do on their own is they'll fill up this lane and then they'll start to probably fill in a little bit into this shoulder. If that's what they want to do. And then it'll leave kind of these 2 lanes open
So
for
that's a
through
10
traffic.
foot, that's a 10-foot wide shoulder that's being added on the north. So people will be able to kind of stack in that 10-foot shoulder and scoot out of the way if they want to go up and turn right. And right now they can't let people by them because, again, that stacking lane's maybe only 100 feet long.
Yeah.
That stacking lane's going to essentially be all the way from Marketplace to Fourth West.
Exactly. That's my point. So is this new curb and gutter that we're having to put in at Zion's?
Yes. Yes.
So my question is, could we design it if we're having to do new curb and gutter anyway and just bump it a teeny bit more north and actually create the 3 lanes all the way and allow for that northernmost lane to be designated as this is your, right turn lane only. And I don't know traffic engineer wise if that actually helps, but I would assume that would probably help that backup east of the 400.
Yes, it would. Yep. I mean, in the same reason that just this little increase will help, to have that all the way would help too.
So we might need to
That's
get
a possibility. I'd say look into that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, kind of like you said, we're already redoing the curb and gutter there now anyway.
Yeah, I like that idea. I like that a lot, moving that a little bit further north.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
One thing we do need to be aware of is, if when we're in these meetings with WFRC, again, this project they're very careful to say that this project is not for traffic volume, but only to mitigate the idling. And so when we start saying we're adding lanes, they start getting a little bit nervous with the funding. So just so you have that in the back of your mind.
Well, I just think the argument is that you have such a long line of cars here at the Dairy Queen east of the 400 West that it takes a couple of cycles, if not even more, sometimes to get through when you're going west. At traffic time. So if there's just any way we can get those cars moving through faster, that's the goal.
Which means people are idling.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
that's definitely worth looking at. That's a 10-foot shoulder already. So we might be able to get another.
It's almost a lane. Yeah.
Make it a lane in and of itself instead of just a shoulder.
Yeah.
I like that.
To Kevin's point, we can't use the funding and make this a through lane. We can't add capacity through the intersection. So we have to carefully use
But you have a lot of people, but you have a lot of people coming from 400 West to the freeway and turning right. They've got a right turn only lane on 400 West. Let them turn right into actually designated additional lane.
Yeah. Yep. So we can present this as a weaving and turning capability that will pass the muster, so to say. So,
yeah, good comment.
Thanks.
I like that.
Thank you.
I'm glad I took us backwards then. Thanks for entertaining it.
Well, and we again, this is preliminary. We're not trying to say this is set in stone. So we're still in the very conceptual and preliminary phase. So don't feel like, we can go back and look at each corner, each lane and where that alignment sits. So again, this is just conceptual. I don't want anyone to feel like this is a final plan, that we're set on. But we do need to, in order to use the funds, we do need to do the double lefts in the north and the east directions at both intersections. That is one thing that is set.
Okay, so Kevin, it sounds like we're gonna have a follow-up meeting. You're gonna get back with us on more of a final then? Make some changes, more of a final?
Well, I think that we'll use this as a concept for the environmental report with these additional comments we've received today.
Yeah.
I don't think we need any more for a concept.
Okay,
Again, I think the direction we're looking for from city council and in the next maybe in a city council meeting or two is that we're on board with combining the projects. And then we can get into the environmental stage.
I question that anyone would question combining the projects. I just don't think that's going to happen.
I agree. I think that's something we could talk about quick and give you an answer.
Yeah, I mean, I have issues with the growth, but combining the projects to me is a home run.
Yeah,
I don't know about home run. It's going to be terrible, but there's no sense having it be terrible
2
times
years in a row.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a home run if it's terrible for 1 year instead of 2.
so I think you got to feel, and I thought the council would probably feel that same way as well too. Kevin, of where council feels on combining the projects.
Yeah, that'd be great. We appreciate all the comments. And again, we can, once we get into the environmental process, we can come back and show you some of the tweaks that we've made and kind of continue to keep everyone involved and everyone informed.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate all of you, the visitors that were here with us, and it was very good input. Glad that we were able to have all of you. Go to the second item of discussion, and this will do a condensed version. So what I would like to do on this one, this is a cemetery discussion, is how this came about was a couple weeks ago, we were got news that we were out of cemetery space. At that point in time, I thought, well, I guess I need to make for sure council knows that everything that I've done in the past couple of years, and that's included in your packet. We probably don't have the time to discuss all of that tonight. You also have a summary history in your packet of what's, to the best of our knowledge, and going back through records of what's happened with the cemetery. But so you can read those, and we may have to follow up with this on some of those items later. But for the time being, let's answer the question once again, maybe from Bruce, what we have presently in our existing cemetery, and we probably may not have much more time than that. And so Bruce, do you want to give us some idea of what we have presently, and maybe what ideas you have?
So what we have presently as far as options?
Yeah, with spaces.
There's one space for sale right now. That was in your packet that
yes,
we were able to get through measuring, and it's quite a labor intensive, because you have to go out with a map of the records, and you have to measure out each of the spaces and then see which spaces are sold but are not occupied. And also you have to match up and make contact sometimes with family, because there's spaces that are owned under different family names that are close to or near to an existing grave. And if there is, after probing and finding that there is an extra space, some of these, I mentioned that gleaning the older part of the cemetery, that there are these extra spaces that are not shown up on the map. And we were able to find about 10 of those going through the first row. And so I'm just guessing, but if we went through the whole cemetery that way, we would be able to find quite a few more. But as I mentioned, when I proposed this to the council, this was about 2 years ago, I think, close to 2 years ago. We have records of 40 people that are buried in our cemetery whose remains are there that we don't know where they are. We have their records and we know they're there, but we don't know where. And by doing this gleaning process of finding these extra spaces and gaps, we will disturb and unearth those 40 people's final resting places. We will dig those up, and that's a little disturbing. And so I want to reiterate that if you choose to have us put in this extra, well, and I don't have the staff nor the time to put in this right now. So it's not something I could do right now. Maybe there's a possibility of contracting it out. There's quite a bit of knowledge of the cemetery. So I don't know if a volunteer would be able to help unless they were willing to commit a bunch of time to learning all of the nuances and intricacies and history of our old records versus our computer records and things like that also. And take into consideration the operations. So a volunteer, I don't know, would be able to understand, what it takes when you are opening and closing graves and the operations and equipment that's used. So anyway, I just would let you know that that is a possibility. And if you want to put forth all of the time and resources and money to it, and you want to commit budget to, hiring contractors to help with that, we could continue that and make that happen. Some options that we've brought before the council before is also niche wall that I got concept plans and prices and gave that to the council. And as far as if you would like to use up some of the entryway space that's not grave space that could be offered to people as an option that are interested in cremation. That's kind of where we're at. We've gotten down to the last of the space, and another option we thought of too is that we hand dig infant graves and also cremation graves. We allow for the remains of two sets of remains in one grave. If someone wants to have either an infant or cremains placed on an existing grave, that we hand dig those down. The west slope is too steep for trucks and backhoes and equipment to go back down that and to dig full-size graves. But one thing we might be able to consider is doing cremation graves or cremation plots that are hand dug down that west slope if we wanted to maximize that space on that west slope.
Grace, do we have any legal obligations when we disturb remains to identify them? What are our obligations when we do that?
No, we don't. We as carefully as we can. And I might just add in, it's not a pleasant task for the staff. When you're asking your city staff and you're asking them to exhume the remains of 40 people. That's not a pleasant thing to be asking your staff to do either, but we do it. It's happened, and we try to be as respectful as we can and replace the remains as best we can and place the new remains on top. But there's no, as far as legal obligations within your own cemetery, you pretty much have jurisdiction over everything within your cemetery. It's only if you're leaving your cemetery that you then have to involve the county, or if you're crossing state lines, you then have to have other requirements.
So it's problematic at best. It sounds like I've come into this that from day one that we were out of cemetery space, just kind of taking that approach. So I think we're 5 minutes before council starts, so we're going to have to put this on another agenda. But I think what we have to determine is look at the data that's been provided. I've tried to provide some. We need to determine if we're basically pursuing a new cemetery or not pursuing a new cemetery. Because, and you've seen the pursuits that I've done, over the last couple of years, and still in pursuit, but nothing has come to fruition yet.
I think
Mr. Mayor, if I could just add, I know other council have also done their legwork on cemetery. If that information could be provided to us, we'll include that in the packet to really have a holistic discussion at our next agenda. So council, if you want to share some things with me, I'll put it on the next agenda as the mayor has done with this agenda.
Brent, and if you could add to that, I think where we're at is if we are staying in the cemetery business, if we're assuming our cemetery is full, I think we really need to look very realistically at a budget. I'd say probably $5 million on a bond issuance and what that would look like from a ballot initiative perspective, because that would have to come from the residents. And that's I'd like to include that in a future discussion as to what the mechanics are on a ballot initiative and a reasonable budget to acquire land and to open a second cemetery.
That's a fair request. And before we do a lot of legwork for something that maybe council is not interested in, we'll do preliminary just to understand the mechanics, but not really get deep into it until we have clear direction from council.
No, don't call bond council or anything. I just want to understand the mechanics.
All right, sounds great. Will do.
And Councilman McEwen is right. I, in my mind, had a $3 to $5 million price tag. And in one email I sent out, this is something I thought if that's the direction we're going, would have to come before the public on a vote. So that's what I like Brant's idea. Include what all of you've done as well too. I know that a couple of you have been on the exploratory group of citizens as well too. Fill in maybe what I missed and get that information as much as we can over to Brant. And I also like that we don't want them to go down a road of spending thousands of hours of time unless we're really serious about it and feel it's a possibility. So do that and we'll get it on the next work session. So with that said, I'll look for an adjournment and we'll get together, just take a quick break, and maybe we'll start at about 7:05 or something for council meeting.
A motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great. Look, we're staying on this channel. Just take a quick break and we'll get started with the big agenda for council meeting. It's 7:05, so let's get started. Hopefully everyone was able to take care of a couple of things they needed to in the break. Welcome to the Centerville City Council meeting of October 6th, done by Zoom. Let's make sure that we have a quorum to be able to proceed. So either raise your hand if you're on mute or say something if you're off mute. So Councilman Ince. All right, Councilwoman Fillmore.
Present.
Thank you. Councilwoman Meekum.
Present.
Councilman McEwen.
Present.
And Councilwoman Ivy.
Present.
Thank you. All 5 council members are here, and we glad you're all here, and hopefully you're all doing well. So before we get started at all with anything else, since we can't have a meeting, I just need to read this determination of why we're having the meeting held this way. In accordance with Utah Code 52-4-2074 of the Utah Open and Public Meeting Act, I have determined that conducting an electronic meeting of the Centerville City Council with an anchor location presents a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who may be present at the anchor location. This determination is based on the facts and circumstances surrounding the COVID-19 pandemic. Considering the continued number of COVID-19 case counts in Utah, meeting in an anchor location presents substantial risk to the health and safety of those in attendance because physical distancing measures may be difficult to maintain at City Hall. Thank you. Let's start with a prayer thought from Councilwoman Fillmore.
Our most gracious Father in heaven, we're thankful for the opportunity to have these technical tools and to be able to adjust to meet in this way, in this difficult time to navigate. And we're thankful for the systems that we have in place to help us navigate these times. We're thankful for our city staff, for our department heads, and all of our employees. We're thankful for the citizenry and their involvement, and for the opportunity that we have to be here tonight to do the work for them. We ask you to please bless that this meeting might have a spirit of working together and accomplishment and working for the good of our community and the good of human nature as a whole. And we ask that we remember that our process and the way that we go about this work is where we can do the most good, even more so than in our end results. We ask a blessing to be upon our nation, that they might also be blessed with this spirit of working together through this inspired process of our representative democracy, and that we all might be involved in lifting the dialogue to be something more positive. And we say these things in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Councilwoman. I will lead us now in a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I was traveling recently on a drive trip and saw a lot of American flags out, which just last week, and so it's great to see that flag on the screen as we do that. Open session. This is the time. We do have a couple of public hearing items tonight, but so we're not looking for discussion in the open session on those public hearings. But any other thing that might be on someone that may participating. If you're on YouTube or if you're Zoom, there's been put up on the the screen a dial-in number and a meeting ID and a passcode. So if you want to make a comment at the open session, just dial in. To give the transmission time to take place, I'm going to give it 30 seconds to a minute to see if anyone calls in. Strive to attempt to keep your comments to a couple minutes if you could. So that is now open for anyone to call in, and I'll give it some time. It appears that no one has any comments for the open session. If there is a call that comes in, I will be notified, and maybe we can get them in. But it's as of now that no one is able to get in, so it is closed. So let's go to the first item of business on their agenda tonight. This is the Ferguson Group, and we have some of the Ferguson Group online with us. We've talked with them in the past. One thing that I like about what's put together, and they'll go over it with us, is, and I mentioned this to Brad today, I like how in the various areas of our city, public safety, rec, this is in your packet information, water and the environment, other priorities, how they've listed our items and the funding opportunities. So I like that. So we welcome back, and Brad, I don't know if you want to introduce them again, or you just want them to step in, but we welcome back the Ferguson Group, and hope that you guys are all well, and that we don't keep you up past your bedtime. So Brad, do you want to say anything else?
Will do. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I asked the Ferguson Group to come back to share the federal agenda for a couple of reasons. One is just to inform the council of our priorities as staff, as projects that we wish to pursue, whether in the short term or long term. Just to give you a heads up in terms of if we come back to you in future city council meetings, you'll have an idea of these projects that we're pursuing, and also to give you an opportunity to either add to the agenda or subtract from the agenda, or even just ask questions on these funding mechanisms that have been proposed on the right column of the federal agenda. So appreciate the Ferguson Group and the time that they put in. We had staff meetings and all day where they met individually with each department, and they went over their various department heads had an opportunity to go over their projects. And this has been sent to department heads, and they all agree they have nothing they wish to add at this point on the federal agenda at this point. Starting October 21st, if I'm not mistaken, Mike, we'll start holding our bi-weekly meetings on a more regular basis on Wednesday with staff, and just to make sure we have constant communication with the Ferguson Group and going over various grant projects that we might be pursuing at that time. With that, I will hand it off to Roger if you want to. I know Mike's kind of the lead, but I'll head it over to Roger for now.
Yeah, thank you, Brant, and thank you, Mayor and council members. We appreciate the opportunity to be with you, and I'm going to do just a real quick handoff actually to Mike, and we can just go through the individual recommendations that came out of the meetings that we had with your staff. And again, as Brant said, we look forward to any comments that you have about any of the recommendations for priorities, and look forward to beginning the process of implementing it as well. So Mike.
Thank you, Roger, and Mayor and members of the council, and Brant and all others who are joining us. It's a pleasure to be with you once again. We appreciate the opportunity. And as Brant said, we had a great opportunity to have a day full of meetings with your excellent city staff. We learned a lot more about the city than we already knew. And we went ahead and took all the information and discussion points from those conversations that we had with your staff, and we put them into 4 categories, as you can see, 4 broad categories: public safety, recreation, economic development, and transportation. The third was water and the environment. And the fourth is sort of a catch-all, other priorities. And starting off with public safety, there are a number of needs that your public safety staffers were very interested in, that the city needs. There are a number of funding opportunities, grant opportunities that we can go after to secure funding for those particular items, in addition to equipment and also potentially bricks and mortar facilities. There was at least one personnel need that was identified. So we'll be looking for funding to help out with personnel with staffing requirements as well. I'll just quickly go through the other broad categories and pull out some quick highlights for you. Under recreation, economic development, and transportation, those are grouped together for a number of reasons. In some ways, they might not seem, it's not self-evident why they would be grouped, but when you look at either the location or in some cases, the funding that we can identify for these particular priorities, it makes sense to group some of these items together. We heard a lot about pickleball courts and how those are important for the city, and a lot of excellent recreation facilities that could use some additional facilities. And woven into that, of course, is, on the water side are the wetlands, your irrigation needs, and then also transportation, not only for roadways, but also we're looking at recreational paths, alternative transportation modes, those sorts of things. You'll also see that under this section, we have the West Side development, economic development and transportation. Those two often go hand in hand when you're looking at federal funding. And we've identified a number of federal agencies where we think there are some good opportunities for funding there. And then finally, on water and the environment, we spent a lot of time talking with several of your staff members about, water. We understand very well that water is king in the West, and we want to help you folks make sure that you can have the best opportunity to make the best use of the resource there for your folks. In addition to water, we're also looking at fire protection and erosion control under that part of the table. And then finally, on other priorities, we talked quite a bit about Utopia and see if there are ways that we can help out with the finance side of that. And you'll also see down at the very bottom a Public Works records management item as well, which kind of rounded out the discussion. We'll be looking for funding there. Right now, there's not a real clear path forward on records management funding, but that's an area where a little bit of creativity might pay off for the city. And just real briefly, I'd like to outline, once we go over this with you and get your input, council members and mayor, we'll take this federal agenda. We'll work with your staff members to put together exhibits and other material that we can use for briefing your congressional delegation, as well as the folks in the agencies that we're going to be targeting for assistance for these projects and programs. And one of the things that we will look at doing pretty quickly is organizing virtual briefings with not only your congressional delegation on the House and Senate side, but also with relevant federal agencies. And our plan is to set those up as rapidly as possible. When we do that, we would have the appropriate staff members on with us to help out with the briefings. And we would also like to work with you to see if we can have an elected official or two or three on the line with us when we do these briefings as well, with your, especially on the congressional side, but also in particular, when we start working with the Corps of Engineers, the Bureau of Reclamation, it might be really helpful to have elected officials on the line as well. So with that, I was wondering if we might, Brant, we can go through these, talk about any particular items you'd like to. Council members, if there are any items that you don't see on the list, we can, add those. If you have any particular questions, and we can also give you a brief on where things stand on the congressional side, and in particular, with respect to the possibility of congressional earmarking coming back in the next Congress. We might want to give you a quick update on that.
So council members, Mike's asked for number one, if you see anything to be added to this list. And then number two, any questions about this list? Anything to be added? Okay, any questions about what's on there?
The only question I had in this one will probably be more for you, Brant. And when we approach some of these grant applications, that's increased in scope from our current engagement. What are your anticipations on funding mechanisms for grant writing and assistance to pursue all of these opportunities that are there?
Well, that's the Ferguson group. They draft all these. Our role is to provide the information to them. For example, if we're pursuing any of the public safety grants, they'll need data from us to draft the grant, but they draft the grant for us, but we provide and support them. And then what they'll also do is, and correct me if I'm wrong in any of this, Mike, but they'll also coordinate the calls. Like, for example, and I think I shared this before, in a previous city when we applied for brownfields grant money, we actually had a call even before we submitted the application with EPA and found out, what are you looking for in this grant application? And they told us exactly what they're looking for in the grant application. So we just regurgitated that, and John Wisby at the time wrote the grant, and we were awarded one of the most competitive grants of $400,000. So they coordinate those meetings and they get us in touch with our congressional delegation, and then we lobby and state our case on why our grant application is more important than in other cities, and moves our application to the top of the pile, and we don't get forgotten or lost in the stack. So that's a huge role that they play. And correct me if I'm wrong on any of that, Mike, and maybe some other services in terms of what you offer. Does that answer your question, Councilmember McEwen?
It does, other than I would say, this all looks great, let's do everything.
Right, and we will. Like I told you, we will exploit the Ferguson group as much as possible within this year.
Right, but what's realistic in terms of staff participation? I mean, you heard the list of who should be on the call, which is great. I think that's a good list, but realistically, we can't do all this inside of the available staff time, right? Or can we? Because I'm saying do it all. It never hurts to ask, but what's realistic?
Yeah, so that's great. So some of these grants maybe just won't be applicable to our situation, whether we just don't qualify based on what they're looking for in the NOFA, the Notice of Fund announcement. But they're, more importantly, for example, when we start meeting bi-weekly, I feel the bi-weekly call is just a number of key staff, myself, maybe Jacob, and a couple other people. When we start pursuing a particular grant, for example, use public safety again, Chief will be heavily involved, or whoever he appoints to be on those calls to be the liaison. Probably in public safety, we'll have our new employee, the assistant to the chief, Louisa, on that, providing or helping coordinate all that information. So it all depends on what we're applying for. Are we pursuing every one of these grants? Realistically, no. But definitely gives us an idea of what grants are possibly out there that we will see if our demographics and our situation and our particular project will apply.
Brant, that's a very good summary of where things are. Excellent explanation. The list is lengthy. We want to make sure that we have all of the, reasonable items on the list. Some are going to, just be ready to go. There are going to be some grant opportunities and your need and all of the requirements, all the boxes will be checked by the city of Centerville, and we'll go after those. In other cases, we'll look at the cost benefit of doing that, whether and there is a certain amount of staff time that does go into, putting together the material for the grants. We can't conjure, the information. We do need to work closely with staff to get that information that we do need. But, if there's not a close fit, then we'll make sure that we focus our attention on the items where there are really good chances for success. One place where we will need to narrow and really identify top priorities for the city is if we get into a situation next year where congressional earmarks come back in, we will be asked, the city will be asked by the congressional offices, particularly on the Senate side, to identify your specific priorities. And in fact, you'll probably be asked to rank them in order 1, 2, 3, and 4, perhaps. If that comes to pass, if earmarks come back, then we will be, looking at this list and really focusing in on, the top 3 items in that particular year, probably for earmarks. We don't want to self-limit, but at the same time, the congressional offices are going to ask us for the priorities. Zach, did you want to give a little bit more of an update on the status of earmarks briefly?
Sure, and good evening, everyone. So actually earlier today, the House Select Committee on the Modernization of Congress released a very detailed report. It's still a draft report, but it's a very bipartisan select committee, and they've, over the last year and a half, have met regularly to come up with solutions to some issues confronting Congress. And one of them is the issue of earmarks, which is, fairly contentious in the past. There were some issues of corruption, but there has been growing bipartisan support to bring something like earmarks back. And so this report that was released today, which is fairly detailed, creates a new program or proposes a new program for the next Congress called the Community Focused Grant Program. So it would no longer be called earmarks, but this program would be very transparent and accountable, and essentially only public entities and local governments would be eligible to actually apply for this program. And so as an example, the city of Centerville would actually have to submit an application to a member of your congressional delegation. And then there would be a formal process, a sort of a vetting process, where the member's office would decide, which projects that they receive that they would, sort of advance along. And those projects would be sent to whatever the relevant congressional committee is that has jurisdiction for the project that's being submitted. And then if it's successful, you could get money for whatever that project is. But it would be very transparent and accountable. And similar to a lot of other federal grant programs, the city would have to submit, a decent amount of information as part of the application. A timeline of the project, an explanation of how it's a good use of taxpayer dollars, detailed description, all of those sorts of things that you typically see in a federal grant program would be part of this process too. So I think they've learned their lessons from the past when it was sort of more in the shadows. And so there would be a lot more information that would be expected as part of it, and it would all be made public. So again, this is just a proposal, but depending on the election results And depending on what leadership wants to do in the new Congress, there's a pretty good chance that this type of system, could be in effect as early as January of 2021.
Mm-hmm. And Zach, thank you for that. And the reason we wanted to spend a little bit of time on it twofold. First, it looks like this does have a good chance of coming to pass. Now, this is not going to take the place of, the grant opportunities that, where we'll be applying directly to the federal agencies. In most cases, it will not take take those off the table. There will be some grants that will, probably be consumed, if not entirely, to a great extent by congressional earmarking. I've already forgotten the new name of it, Zach, but we'll call it earmarking for now. So it's not, grants will not go away, but earmarks could be important. The second reason why we want to spend a little time on it is that if it does come to pass, as Zach said, cities like Centerville are going to be the people who are going to have an opportunity to go for congressional earmarks at the exclusion of virtually all other entities, cities, joint powers authorities, counties, perhaps states. But I believe that a lot of the talk has been focusing it on sub-state earmarks. I might be incorrect on that, but the cities are in prime position to take advantage of earmarking.
Thank you. So this has been mentioned briefly, but when I look at this list, I think they're all wonderful as well too. But there's obviously some, and you've talked about it, that maybe you'd be calling on us to rank them, that when you look at Maslow's basic hierarchy of needs, it's with those basic hierarchy of needs that we need to take care of first, as far as what people need to live on. So I'm hoping that, we obviously pursue those grants first for failing basic needs that we might have. So that's just my 2 cents worth. Council, anything more?
Part of the prioritization for me is the dollar amount of the grant. I don't want to spend $500 chasing $100 grants.
Sure.
Just there, but if we have some of these that are higher dollar value item grants, I'd like to understand what the available funds are. So I'm assuming if we're going after a water tank on the hillside, we're talking multiple millions of dollars available. Those are the ones where if we do have to pick and choose on staff time, I'd like to make sure we're concentrated.
We agree with you.
More for the Ferguson Group?
Can I presume that we can have a little bit of time to look at this and then maybe make comments in writing?
Yeah, again, this is a living document, right? So Councilman Rentz, you're welcome to make throughout the year, we can make or add changes. This is our first opportunity to put together and jumpstart somewhere. And so we're gonna jump from here, but feel free to add any comments anytime.
I would throw in there was a question about what the value of this would be. This is at least to me, the demonstration of the beginning of that return value. These are things we didn't find. I'm sure we could have found some of them, but not to the extent. So I'm excited to see step 2 prioritization and then actually go after some of this money. So forward we go.
And as I've always said, we were pretty good at chasing state grants, but it's great to have this ability to chase some of these federal grants. So thank you. Thanks for being here tonight. If there's nothing else, then we will move on to our next issue. But thank you, Ferguson Group, and thanks for all you've been doing so far.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
You bet. Thank you. Let's move on to item number 2. This is a public hearing matter. This is a street name change of 165 East to Barris Cove. it looks like Lisa's popped on the screen. So Lisa, are you addressing it from a staff standpoint?
Yes, Mayor. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. This first item you have is a public hearing on a request to change the name of a street. It involves 165 East Chase Lane in the Barris Cove subdivision. So this subdivision was recently created not that long ago, just platted. It's 13 lots. And the family, the Barrises, would like to change the name from 165 East to Barris Cove. Ordinances allow for street name changes to come to the city council with some noticing requirements, which we have provided to any of the property owners that have a mailing address on the subject street. And these property owners mainly include the applicants, the Barrises, and also Ivory Development owns most of the lots. So with the applicant and a letter from Ivory Homes, Ivory Development, actually 90% of the lots with addresses on this street agree to this name change. And the Public Works Director has reviewed this and is also recommending approval. So this is a public hearing matter, but I believe the applicant, Jody Barris, is also online. So if you'd like to give her an opportunity to address this as well, you may have a couple things to say, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
And I would add to what Lisa said, if you look through your packet, we also have letters from the fire chief and the police chief as well too, stating that their opinion on it. So yes, since this is a public hearing matter, we give the applicant a chance to address the council as well. So Jody, welcome. And
hello.
Address this however you would like.
Pretty much what Lisa said. We sold this development to Ivory Homes. The project has always been named Barris Cove, but we neglected to put it formally on, as the street name. So we're just trying to get that accomplished tonight.
Okay. Before I open the public hearing, I know that many of you like to your questions and comments after, but any questions before I go to public hearing? If not, then this is a public hearing matter. This is a public hearing on the street name change from 165 East to Barris Cove. The public is welcome to call in and make any comments. On the screen, both on YouTube and Zoom, we have the information needed to call in. So I will give it a little bit of time. So the public hearing is now open. It appears there is no comments to be made on the public hearing, so I will close the public hearing, and we will come back to see if there is any questions or discussion from council to staff or to the applicant.
This appears pretty straightforward to me. I would motion that we adopt resolution 2020-28.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, I will do a roll call vote. Councilman Ince.
Wish you'd put me last. Nay.
Nay. Councilwoman Fillmore.
Aye.
Councilwoman Meekum.
Aye.
Councilman McEwen.
Aye.
And Councilwoman Ivy.
Aye.
That motion passes 4-1. Thank you for everybody that was here tonight on that matter. Moving on to item number 3. This is a public hearing matter as well too. This is on the Hive development, zone map amendment and PDL conceptual plan. And so let me get down to that information. I didn't print it all out. So we will start by seeing, oh, there he is, Corey. Do you have some comments on this before we go to the applicant?
I'm prepared to answer any questions or give you a summary of the Planning Commission recommendation, whatever you'd prefer, Mayor.
Why don't you give us a little background on this and what was discussed in Planning Commission, just as an update.
All right, thank you, Mayor, and good evening, council members. As indicated, this is a legislative action. You're looking at 2 components of that legislative action. You're looking at a rezone of a portion of the property and also looking at adding a PDO. So I'll share a screen with you. Hopefully you see that. This is our current zoning map, and you can see the Centerville Mobile Home Estates are there with, I think, 51 trailer pads. I think there's about 48 trailers that were originally present on the property recently. They have some clarifying issues about this existing zone and the project so that we maybe not get confused. The property is currently zoned residential high, and so it's allowed up to 8 units an acre as a permitted use and up to 12 units an acre as a conditional use. You may be familiar a couple of months ago, the proposed buyer of the property, CW Urban, had gone through the process with the Planning Commission to look at a conceptual site plan to develop the entire piece as a residential high zone. They did receive a conceptual acceptance of the Planning Commission, and for the moment and time that project is on hold. And what you're seeing before you tonight is a proposal that may change the direction of that initial application, and they'd like to seek a different development design. So if you look at the exhibits in your background information, they would like to rezone a portion of the property. So you can see now that they would keep majority of the property in the RH zone, and they would take just under an acre on the west side along the frontage road marketplace area and change that to commercial high zoning. In summary, they would like to develop both of the areas as a PDO. A lot of that is how the project is integrated through access, parking, and some common amenities. And so as part of the rezone of the CH, they'd like to rezone both the original remaining piece of RH and the new zone CH into a master plan to PDO development. And so that's what they're coming to you tonight for, is to look at this CH portion rezone and then change both of the new zone properties into that PDO. As you're aware, the PDO has a flexibility to alter or change the base zoning requirements. And so a couple of things just to highlight for what they're requesting is on the CH portion of the property, they would like to build an office. And I think I'm pretty sure the applicant can verify, but the applicant's offices would be transferred to this new commercial zone, and they would construct their headquarters into that commercial office building. As you know, CH allows quite a number of uses and also allows structures to be built between 10,000 and 50,000 square feet, depending on whether the footprint and the parking and the landscaping fits. They would like to restrict that in their application to an 18,000 square foot building, its associated parking and landscaping, and they would limit it to just the office use, meaning that all of the other uses would be restricted or prohibited in the CH zone. They would just simply have an office building perpetually for this commercial site, unless otherwise changed in some long future. So keep that in mind. They would restrict it to office use to an 18,000 square foot building. On the RH portion, the residential high portion, they would like to eliminate some of the multifamily density units. They'd like to change those over to single family. And currently in the RH zone, single family uses are prohibited. So that's part of their request, is to come in and be able to alter the base zoning to add single family use to this zone. And they believe the single family units would number 18 single family units along the north property line. And then they would use the remaining density allotted for the RH to the townhomes on the south property. So that's one variation that they'd like to do, is add the single family uses. The other variation is that the PDO plan would vest them for the total number of units of 68. And so part of the review is to discuss the density issue of 9 to 12 is normally a CUP. They'd like to eliminate that process, vested in the 68 units. And with the master plan, you'll see in your attachments, they have put together a design booklet, how it'd be developed, their setbacks, their spacing, the number of parking. They submitted a traffic study already. And so from their perspective, they're answering the majority of the questions that would happen under a CUP. So those would be the two major things that you would be doing some variations. There's a couple other minor ones I think we list in the staff report, but that's what they would do with the RH zone as far as variation to standards. If you want to see the layout of the site, you can see the office building would be built on the left-hand side or the west side of the property along the frontage road. They would share this access through the development. Part of that is once you're above 20 units in the RH zone, you need a secondary access. So due to the narrowness of this property, they would combine the two zones together as a common access. This would meet our normal standards. It'd be it actually exceeds it. It's a 30-foot wide street. They would have on-street parking on one side, the townhome units with alleys and garages on the south side, the single family on the north side with garages. And then they would share this bank of parking where these three arrows come down. They would share this bank of parking. It's extra parking. So they would just simply share it between the two uses. And then here to the left center, they would share the ability to use the common areas. I believe they have a pavilion and a pickleball court and a green space area that would be shared in the project. So I think that briefly summarizes the project, unless you have specific questions. The Planning Commission did review it. They did host their hearing, and it did come to you with a recommendation of approval in a 4-2 vote with the Planning Commission. So that's my summary. I'll let you ask me questions or move on to the applicant.
Corey, I do have one question for you. It's regarding the submittal, and it says the proposed. It's mentioning the net square footage on the office building. Correct me if I'm wrong. That was a very long planning commission, and I thank the commissioners for the amount of time they spent on that. Rewatching it was not half as fun as I'm sure as being there, but all 5 hours and whatever, it was very instructional. I recall the building size being like 12,000 square feet. On the submittal, it shows 15, and you're saying 18. Where are we on the actual building size?
Yes, they had a length, you're correct. They had a lengthy discussion on that. I think that was some misunderstanding on staff's part as well as the applicant's part. And as that clarification came to light in the Planning Commission, it spawned a number of discussions and even led to what I perceive the reason the 2 votes negative to the project occurred. I don't want to speak directly for them, but I think that was part of the hiccup with the 2 planning commissioners. From my understanding, all of the plans were over 15,000 square feet net. So if I look back at all the submittals, it shows 15,000 square feet net. I think it was the interpretation of the net. The footprint on the plans has always remained the same, and the number of parking stalls has always remained the same on the plans. It was how the square footage net was interpreted. I, as a staff member, was looking at it as a ratio between the acreage that was going to be moved to the commercial high zone, and they were just saying the net result, for lack of better terms, was a 15,000 square foot building given this much parking. I think the applicant looked at with the architect, looked at the 15,000 square feet as net usable area of office. And I think the confusion comes in is how you calculate parking. Parking is calculated on a gross square footage of the building. And as that discussion ensued, we did some quick calculations, which I think made a couple of commissioners uncomfortable on whether we were verifying the parking was adequate. And they had depicted on site all but 10 stalls, I think, originally that needed to cover the building. And they have the cross parking that functions between the 2 projects. So they should have sufficient parking. And so I don't know if that answers the question, but the plans were shown in the correct footprint. It was the interpretation of whether it was 15,000 square feet of gross building versus 15,000 square feet of office use area. And they counted the 15 as office use area, with their storage and bathrooms being the remaining portion of the building.
I'm just trying to figure out where you got to the 18. Is that a building footprint? Because you said 18, and I'm trying to figure out where the other 3,000 square feet are coming from.
It would be all 3 floors, 18,000 square feet. I mean, there was discussion of even up to 20, whether the city would entertain that. And in that meeting, the applicant committed to 18,000.
So the submittal that we have here that says 15,000 could be 18,000?
There should be an updated submittal in your packet. This shows the 18,000. I think Lisa, not to put her on the spot, but she included it in your enabling ordinance.
Yes, it's in the ordinance, and it's also an attachment that says something like new submittal. Let me see if
It could be me because I've got 200 windows open and I may have opened the same attachment twice.
It is the second attachment that says the Hive overall site plan 10/1/2020. So they revised that attachment for this meeting in response to the Planning Commission discussion. There's one document in the ordinance that still refers to the 15,000, but this is the site plan with the 18,000.
Okay, so the attachment that has the single page. Okay, I got it. Thanks.
Any other questions for Corey before we turn it over to the applicant?
Corey, you're comfortable that yes, because it's a PDO, when they commit to something, we can bank on that?
Yes, and
It always makes me nervous to change zoning on things, because how can we guarantee that they're going to do what they said they were going to do, rather than just say we have the zoning and we want to do something different?
That's a great question. Yes, under a PDO, you can customize the project according to the plan they submit and according to this public process. And as you make the legislative decision, you can fix what's going to happen. I think there's two routes that you can take. The route that you're seeing submitted to you is all of the exhibits that are expected to be attached as part of any approval of a rezone and a PDO, and then future subdivision and site plans for the projects would be subject to all of those original exhibits, and that's how you control it. If you are concerned at any point in time that the enabling ordinance of the resolution the ordinance to adopt the PDO zone, other times you can use what's called a development agreement, where they take all of those exhibits, and not only is it part of the ordinance for rezone, it becomes a contractual thing recorded against the property. So we've done it both ways in the city. Legacy Crossing was done with a development agreement, and so that is recorded against the property and any subsequent owners. Legacy Trails across the street was done just with the ordinance resolution. I think there's advantages and disadvantages. The recording it against the property maybe gives you that second witness surety that there's no questions to be asked. But as you see, the downside of that is Legacy Crossing has had to come in, I think, 5 or 6 times. And we try to get everybody's signatures. There becomes internal fights with subsequent property owners. And it can make it difficult for the city to do the city businesses if they need to change something that improves the project. Because not only do you do a legislative action change, you have to do a development agreement amendment. And I think Legacy Crossing shows the downside that we've needed to change it through time, and infighting among property owners makes it difficult. So either way, I think is satisfactory from my point of view. It's actually what makes you feel secure.
And do you know of any history where we've done it just without the development agreement and it hasn't gone well?
Well, no project ever goes well because you're starting out at what substantially is approved, and then when people start putting ink to the paper, you start finding all these little things that you have to change and not change. But I would not say I've seen a breakdown either way. I just see that as pen hits paper, there's sometimes a little bit of pain to come back and say, oh, this didn't quite work that way. But I think everything that we've approved to date that I've been here substantially reflects what the PDO expected.
Thank you.
Anything else for Corey before I have the applicant respond? Okay, we have the applicant, Darlene Carter, with us from CW Urban. How are you, Darlene, tonight? Welcome here. You need to turn your, you got it?
Well, thank you, Mayor.
There you go. Do you have anything you want to say before I turn this over to a public hearing?
I would like to, only in the effort that this is the first time I've had the opportunity to speak or address the council and the mayor on this project. I'm sure you all are aware we have been to the Planning Commission, I believe, 4 times now. And our project today is, I believe, reflective of many comments from the staff, multiple comments from the Planning Commission, and most of all, a lot of comments from the surrounding neighbors as to what they would like to see on the project. I don't know if my computer wasn't tracking, but when Corey was talking about the project, I actually didn't see any visuals. So maybe those came up or didn't come up. But you know, I would like to give a brief overview of the project. As Corey mentioned, we did receive a concept approval that had a conditional use up to 12 units. We were okay moving forward with that. However, in speaking with the public and the commission, we felt that this particular parcel could be positioned a little bit better where it is nestled in between the RL zone and the neighboring commercial zones. We received some negative feedback about actually having residential units on the frontage road. We addressed multiple parking issues, and we really felt that to honor the neighboring RL zone, it would be appropriate to line the most north portion of the property with single family homes that mirrored the backyard setbacks of the adjacent use. So I believe that we feel strong that this is the highest and best use for the project. However, if in the discussion that's not unanimous, we would potentially pursue the, we would just pursue the 12 units per acre on the townhome use. In terms of Councilman Ivy, I have 100% confidence in our ability to execute this plan as proposed. I'm comfortable following staff's recommendation on either a development agreement or attaching these exhibits to the PUD. We are committed to delivering exactly what we said. I believe the public hearing hasn't come up yet, so maybe I'll save this comment for later, but I think the lack of participants on the call could be a reflection of we really have spent the last 6 months trying to hear the feedback from as many people as possible and try and make the very best plan possible for all those involved, including the residents of Centerville Mobile Estates, who we are in communication with and have communicated with on multiple transition plans. And once change of ownership happens on the parcel, we have intention of assistance in a variety of ways for those residents. So I'm happy to go over the plan in any more detail, but if anybody isn't familiar with how we got to this point, but I do believe that we have addressed every comment. And while I agree it was, Councilman McEwen, you're right, a very long meeting last time that got a little sideways on the office parcel. I do believe that we were commended for our ability to be nimble and listen to feedback. And I think that was just wanting to clarify our office at the last minute. The reason I will tell you why we feel so strongly about that is because Corey mentioned our purpose is to move the entire CW development group to this parcel and build a state-of-the-art office building. For us to make that investment into our company and the city, we just want to make sure that we don't build an office building that in 6 months we're just a couple thousand square feet shy of. So the 18,000 gross, 15,000 net that we landed on was really a restriction of the parking that would be required in what's allowed for that particular acre that we're zoning. And so we know we can't get any parking. The building won't get any bigger. It may end up smaller. Well, probably not because you have the footprint, but that's really what it was indicative of. You know, we sell houses for a living. Nobody wants to buy a house and 2 months later realize they wish they had that extra room. So that's just what we're trying to avoid. And so that is our application. And again, I look forward to more public comment and camaraderie through all those involved as we move forward in the process.
Thank you, Darlene. Unless you have questions for Darlene, I'll move to the public hearing portion. Any questions, Darlene, before I go to the public hearing?
Remind me the acreage again.
Of the actual entire site?
Yes.
6.6, I believe.
That's correct, according to our package information, Councilman.
I just couldn't find it in there.
Okay. If there's no other questions for her, I will go to the public hearing portion. So this is a public hearing for the Hive Development Zone Map Amendment and PDO Conceptual Plan. Now, there may be some of the public on Zoom. There may be some on YouTube. On the screen of either one, there is a dial number, a meeting ID, and a passcode. If you're on Zoom, you could unmute as well too. So I will open this public hearing on this matter, and we'll give the transmission a little bit of delay time there. So I will give it a minute or so. So the public hearing is now open.
So are the names we're seeing on the screen not wanting to speak?
They may not, or they may be here for another matter, or they may just be listening. That's why I said they can click their unmute if they want to just talk on this issue.
Yes, I just want to make sure that they understand how to do that.
Yes.
We have had a couple of names just pop up.
So what Councilwoman Meekum is saying is anybody that is on Zoom on the screen, you would need to unmute your microphone if you want to comment on this issue on the public hearing on the Hive development. Unless I get a message otherwise that there's been some calls that we've missed. And I'm not getting a message, or unless somebody is trying to unmute. It doesn't look like we have any responses on this public hearing matter. So if that's the case, it looks like it is, and I will close the public hearing, and we'll come back to further discussion for either staff or the applicant. Any further questions or discussion from council members?
I have a few questions.
Okay, go ahead.
One of them is on the townhomes. Are you planning on selling those townhomes, or were they going to be rentals?
Good question. All of our product is going to be for sale.
Okay. And on the house size, I assume they have no basements?
That is correct. Yeah, they will be a slab on grade.
And how many square feet are most of those houses?
Our projection right now is that they would be 1,700 square feet to just over 2,000 square feet.
Okay. Let's see. Putting some value in. So first of all, I want you to know I've got a lot of questions, but I am impressed. I feel like you are trying to work with the public. I've watched all the meetings, and you know, as far as this compared to your other one, I really feel like you are trying to give us a good product. So I don't want you to feel like I'm anti. I just have a lot of questions. With value in the public process, though, one of the things we did hear was the neighbors were very concerned about balconies on the townhomes on the other side. I'm worried about this 3-story building, the north side, the windows, maybe really looking into all of the homes on that north side. I'm wondering if there's some way we can have that building so that the north side doesn't have a ton of windows looking into all those people's property on the 3rd floor.
I think, Robin, though, you'd really be destroying the aesthetics of the building. That building has a very specific design with a lot of glass, and I think if you started doing that, you would really be negatively impacting the aesthetics of the building. I recognize that there's a potential privacy issue, but I would be concerned that we would be doing some damage to the applicant's building by making such a request.
Corey, how do you, what do you think about that? Are you there, Corey?
I'm here. Yeah, it's one of those subjective values. I know that I've talked with Ms. Carter about it in some previous conversations. I mean, I agree that there's an aesthetic issue of the building. I'm not an architect, so I can't say from my perspective how much it affects the aesthetics. I'm sure from an applicant standpoint, they have some, it's like mentioned, it's their home and they want to live in the home is in a nice way. I think from my perspective, part of what my positioning was at the Planning Commission and some hesitancy, if you went back and saw the meeting on my part, was the, how we're kind of have this policy about how intense things get the further we get away from Parish Lane. And recognizing that we've got commercial very high around the area, residential very high around the area. So asking for commercial high seemed to fit at least the previous decisions that were made. But in trying to apply the policy of the general plan, we want to reduce those intensities from within 1,000 feet of the corridor and 500 feet of the corridor, 500 being more intensive than 1,000 feet from the corridor being more intensive. And the CM zone is really the category that is the 500 to 1,000 feet, not the CH. But I also recognize that regardless of whether we call it CM or CH, the PDO allowed us to have a lot of input on what exactly got built. And so the policy centering around the distance seemed to, for me, to disappear to some extent because we could use the PDO to control that intensity. And so my hesitancy is, the CM zone is a 10,000 square foot footprint max. The CH zone allows 10,000 to 50,000. Recognizing the size of property would not get us to 50,000. We're dealing somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 20,000 square feet of potential use of that area. For me, going to 20,000 square feet was a double of the 10,000 square feet. And looking at the surrounding developments, you don't have the fast food, the Chick-fil-A, recognizing that we have the MTC buildings there, but they sit within that 500-foot area. So how much and how far do we go? And when the proposal was 15,000 square feet, it was pretty easy into my mind to say, well, that's not too much further. It's a third further than what the original 10,000 square feet size. When the discussions hit the 20,000 square feet, I became a little hesitant because that's doubling that CM's limitation. and the existing buildings around become a little bit smaller than maybe 10 to 15,000. And so I looked at that compatibility issue, recognizing though in the meeting that the footprint was really at the 18,000 square feet, and the parking and the adjustment of landscaping was at the 18,000 square feet. So it was more of me not understanding the relationship between 15,000 and the parking, and they committed to the 18,000, which is 3,000 square feet more. And so for me, whether it's a 15,000 square foot building or a 18,000 square foot building gets a little bit diminished from my perspective. And my hesitancy was centered around, well, in the past policies, what we've heard is the complaints for the balconies for the multifamily units. Now, to be clear about that, I think both zones are equally or allowed to have balconies. So for me, in an objective view, it doesn't matter to me whether this development has balconies or whether the single family has balconies. Each development is allowed to have balconies because each development's allowed up to 30 feet and 35 feet in height. And so for me personally, as an objective viewer, balconies is not an issue. But if I look at the public hearing process, we've lost the aesthetics from my perspective with the single family homes having some limited semi-outdoor space with some balconies. I think that's aesthetic and a value to those homes. But the developer has acquiesced to that public comment and saying, we're going to get rid of the balconies because that's the concern. So then my hesitancy, to be honest, is if we have a 3-story building, it's 15 or 18,000 square feet, does that subjective value of balconies still raise a CUP concern, a conditional use permit concern? Because remember, we're eliminating the conditional use permit through the process of the PDO. We're vesting it for what it is. And so it's a long answer, but it's a subjective value. Does the 3rd story create an impact that needs to be mitigated? Since we're not going to do a CUP for the density, we're going to do a new rezone, but we can use the PDO to mitigate impacts. Does the 3rd story or the 2nd story with windows create this public perception of an impact that I experienced through the other process? And
Sorry, could you?
And I think that's important for the council to decide. Does that create something that needs to be mitigated at this point because the PDO is your tool to do it, or are you comfortable with it as is?
Could you pull up the visual? I'm looking at just the layout.
The layout portion?
I'm just looking at that first visual before the ordinance in our packet. Yeah. So, Robin, I understand your concern, but to compare it to the first thing that we had concern about, I think is quite different in that we were talking then about the 3-story buildings being along that north fence line and being a 15-foot setback, right? And so now we're talking about a 20-foot setback, 2-story single-family homes, which in and of itself addresses pretty much all the concerns that we heard there. And then the building on the corner here, not only is there quite a lot of feet of parking lot and landscaping between the Applewood homes and that building, but then the angle that it's facing on. So you've got that back of the building, but it's at an angle and so many feet away from the Applewood. So
I agree on that, Tammy. Like I said, I was a little just concerned about that. My other concern is the size. I mean, when you look at the size compared to Chick-fil-A to McDonald's, I tried to find some square footage. It looks like it's about double the size of In-N-Out. Is it going to dwarf the other things in the area is one of my questions. And the other one is, so we are zoning it commercial high, we all know that, you know, if they decide, you know, this isn't the building for them in 5 years, is there anything else that could be sold for because it's commercial high that we wouldn't be comfortable with there? You know, I'm not saying one way or the other. My concern is, would we be better off to go commercial medium and just in the CUP give them the bigger building rather than going commercial high in case someday they want to sell it, and it would allow something that wouldn't be, you know, right there in that area wouldn't be as good. And I don't know what else commercial high would allow.
Is that approach possible, Corey? To give the rezone of commercial, I mean, are we actually rezoning, or we're having to rewrite the underlying zone to include the allowing of the single family homes and then to have?
No, you're rewriting the zoning for only the commercial piece, but you're varying the standards for the residential high to allow the single.
So
family.
the variance is just under the PUD. Is that correct? The PDO. And so the variance for the allowing of the single family homes isn't rewriting the zone. It's just a variance under the PDO. But to allow this size of building, we have to include that commercial high is an underlying zone now in this area.
Because the residential doesn't allow for commercial uses.
Right, but Robin's suggestion was to say commercial medium, but with a variance in size because of the PDO.
Right, or commercial high with a restriction. It's a matter of how you plate the dinner plate. Which way are you plating it, saying here's a small plate but a bigger portion of the allowed on the small plate, or here's a big place and we're narrowing the serving size?
Yeah, the thing is too is that just what's across the street, fast food restaurants aren't allowed in our commercial medium either. Drive-through fast food restaurants, right?
Right, and their zone commercial very high right now. That's
right. And so, I mean, the thing that I'm impressed with the plan that we have in front of us is and you guys know I'm huge on this, right? But the buffering and the consideration to each neighboring property and its use. And in my opinion, I don't know if we could have gotten much better than this in that way, because the commercial building is more of a palatable commercial high use, the office building, to mesh with the residential behind it. But it's a good buffer, or it's a good step down from the commercial very high, which is just across the street and just south. Right? So it's that one step away from what it's right next to, but it's an appropriate use, the most appropriate use to be next to the residential. And then they've considered changing the single family homes to match what's next to it there. And then the townhomes to be next to commercial very high. Right? So, I mean, I just don't know how we can ask for a more customized to this mishmash of an area plan in its appropriateness.
I would echo that, Tammy, and that the applicant, I think, through this process, and of course, like everyone else, I've watched every meeting that has involved us with a lot of interest and specificity in what was happening. I think that the applicant has done an amazing job of trying to be a responsible corporate citizen, reacting to the needs of the community or implied needs. And from a project standpoint, the way that this lays out with the commercial building on the frontage road and buffered the way it is, I think it's the best possible drop-in you could get for that space. I really can't picture a better arrangement that matches all of the requirements. I mean, it just
and we've
really, it's
sorry.
really good. Yeah, you're fine.
Yeah. Well, we've just already wrung out of them, I think, what we can wring out of them. It's been a pretty intense process, right? And with good reason and with good result. And I just want us to recognize that at some point we say, wow, you listened, good job.
Yeah, and then we throw another compliment to the Planning Commission for all the work that they did in helping us get to this point. But this, for what is being proposed, I do not have any heartburn with the way it sits in its current configuration. I really can't find much that I don't like. I actually like the building architecture. I think it's a really good looking building. as far as from the conceptuals. It seems to meet all the boxes to leave me in a position where I don't have a ton of objections against this project as it's currently defined.
And because, not to cut discussion short, but just because I've expressed that sentiment and it has already been such a long, arduous process, and we see, I think, with the lack of public comment that we've gotten to a good place, I'm going to go ahead and put a motion on the table to approve the proposed zone map amendment for approximately 6.63 acres of property located at 555 North, 400 West from residential high to commercial high and residential high, with a planned development overlay, including the PDO concept plan approval for the Hive Development Ordinance number 2020-12.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion?
Yeah, I have some discussion. While I share many of the thoughts of both George and Tammy, I still think it's awful crowded. And I would be much happier if it were pared down a little bit.
And how would we bring that down? Because Councilman Entz, I've been through all these meetings as well too. What are you suggesting? Where do you see paring it down?
And before we get into that level of detail, I would just put on the table a reminder that they already have an approval for conditional use up to 12 units an acre. And so then we just go back to the less customized for the area plan that has a lot more problems.
Yes, but they're getting a variance and getting the commercial building, which gives us the ability to talk about it. What would I propose? I would propose coming from 18 down to 16 maybe. And I don't know on the other side, it's just an awful lot of units at the maximum density, which is higher than our standard high density. Now it is conditional. I understand that, but it's just a lot of units. I have a hard time saying 16 and what would I take out? 2, 4, 6, 8. I have a hard time trying to get them down to 40, but it's just a lot of units.
It is, Bill. I agree with you. But when you look at the location where it's at, its traffic access is really good. I mean, it's not going to impact other neighborhoods specifically from the way I look at it. I think the problem is the reality of housing costs in Utah and the changing demographic. I don't think they wouldn't propose this if they didn't think they could sell it. And I think that this is going to sell pretty rapidly. And, if anyone believes in the idea that they want their kids to be able to live in Centerville, these are the type of units that they'll be attracted to. It won't be, the 1/8 acre, 1/4 acre lot with a smaller home and a bigger yard. The millennial crowd is looking very much for, give me a 0 lot line. I don't want to maintain anything. I'd rather have a bigger house and smaller lot, and the density seems to be less of an issue to them.
And some pickleball courts.
And some pickleball courts, which are not public, they belong to the HOA.
Right.
You need to make sure.
But will help them sell like hotcakes.
I don't think they're going to have a problem with it. I just don't know a better way to position.
I don't think they'll have a problem selling them. I question that we will be satisfied with what we end up with.
And I agree, I guess, with everybody. I think, I'm with Tammy, I'm with George. I really think they came back and gave us a great, they really worked and listened to the people, but I'm with Bill. I'd feel so much more comfortable if it was just a little bit less compact, maybe even so that the houses, when you say 1,700, I'm looking at that thinking that's only 850 square feet on one floor. They're going to be pretty small. I'm like Bill. I'd like to see 16 homes and maybe 45, 46 townhomes You know, I don't want to take it down to where they can't make their profit, because I do think they've come up with an awesome development. I'm with Bill. It's a little bit dense for me, but I know they have their 12 conditional use. So I'm, you know, kind of mixed in between. My other concern is Bill usually has us not vote on something the first night it comes before us, so we can think over it a little bit.
Yeah, but let me throw this out as a this may be a little bit of an unfair question, but I'm going to ask it in this form. Is the reduction giving us a moral victory but not a practical one? I mean, what's the impact of those two recommended reductions? I'm just trying to figure out from a pragmatic standpoint, what do we gain by asking the developer to do that?
I just like to see a little bit bigger houses and a little bit, I mean, 2 probably isn't going to make a huge difference. You're right. Yet if you had that 2 to kind of put into each one of those, I mean, I think either one of them is going to sell. I mean, it's Centerville. Everybody loves Centerville. So I have, you know, I don't know. Like I said, if I were to have a choice, I would prefer that there was just a little bit less and a little bit bigger homes, and the same with the townhomes, a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, let me throw this out. What we're looking at presently is they have approval for residential high with the CUP of 12. So if we don't go this direction, then they can put in more residential. I mean, this gives a good outlay for residential and commercial on the frontage road. I don't see what we're gaining, because they already have it on residential high, so they just throw in more residential high.
Mayor, may I just give you some information, and then you can decide as the council. You have a motion and a second, so I realize you're in your discussion. The applicant has expressed an interest to respond to any of your questions if you're still willing to move that direction. And I don't know procedurally the best way to handle that.
I think procedurally we're probably past that though, because
we can't hear from her again.
Well, no. I think
no, once Tammy made the motion and George seconded it, kind of cut that out as I understand it.
Yeah, we can't. I don't think we're open to deals. We have to consider the motion on the table as
Could Tammy drop that and we hear what she has to say and then make the motion again? I'd love to hear what she has to say.
Mayor, can I just say that she's messaged me and said that that was on a prior issue and she's okay not to speak now.
Okay. So that was on a prior issue and she doesn't have any input right now.
I guess the other question that I have is that I'm astounded that the lack of public comment.
Well, there was tons of public comment all through.
I understand, you're absolutely right, but that still leaves me astounded that there's been no comment.
I just want to say, and I feel really very strongly about this, is that we're never shooting for perfect. And at some point, I think as a council, we need to be very careful and make sure that we're being reasonable. This is a council full of very conservatively minded people who believe in those conservative principles of property rights and the free market. And this has been an extraordinary example of what the process can do right, in that the public comment has made a huge difference in the end product. And the free market is also speaking here as to what people are going to want enough to buy, and that this developer knows that they're wanting to invest their own piece of business into our property to be located here. And they know that what they're going to build is going to sell. And, you know, they could have at the beginning of this process said, well, we know what we're going to build is going to sell earlier in the process and not been as responsive. So when the process has already been this lengthy and this responded to in a respectful way, and we're still nitpicking at it, I think that just reflects poorly on us. I think that that makes developers and people who are trying to work with Centerville City question, if they come here, are they ever going to get a yes no matter what they do? That's my 2 cents on that.
Well, Bill, to the reason we don't have a lot of comment, I agree with Tammy in that the process worked the way that it should have with the Planning Commission. And I can't stress enough how much time and effort they spent. If we go all the way back to the very first hearing that they had, which was extremely emotionally charged, and my hat's off to our chair of the Planning Commission. Shailene did an amazing job dealing with a lot of issues that were not apparent to the general public, but made them feel welcome to the process and let them participate in a fashion that just made it possible to get where we're at. I think they did an incredible job, and they did the part that you always hope a planning commission is going to do, which is buffer it into a good design so that by the time it reaches the council, there isn't much left for us to say. I think they did their job, absolutely knocked it out of the park, and this is the result. This is, like we've been talking about, this is the best you can get for this parcel to match all of those planning initiatives that you want in terms of, you know, transition between uses. We've got a corporate citizen who wants to not only build, but they want to live there themselves. I think that speaks volumes as to their commitment to our community. So I think we're probably okay. I asked the question earlier about, well, what are we gaining, a moral victory or a practical one? Because to me, this is always the trouble, which is when does our changes become impactful to the point where they create what we're looking for, which is the lower density. In this case, I think we're at the density optimal for the area without going back to the CUP. So I'm really okay with this as it sits.
Councilwoman Ivy, are you back with us?
I am. Sorry about that. My
Okay, thank you.
computer's having trouble.
Sorry about that. I got a message that she had been kicked out. I wanted to make sure that she was back and
Thank you.
participate in comment or vote. So, is there any further? Go ahead, Councilwoman Ivy.
I was going to say, is this the same time that we should look at whether we need to do anything additional on restricting the uses for the very high? Should that be part of this motion, or what do you think? Because I'm not comfortable with just saying it's commercial very high, and if they move out of it later, anybody can do anything.
Yeah, that would be an important question for Corey.
As I see the enabling ordinances before you, it restricts it to office use only perpetually unless you change the PDO someday in the future.
Oh, good. That makes me feel better.
So it's office use only right now, Corey.
Yeah, and I think that's the optimal use for the location.
Yep, I agree.
I don't know that we need to call the question, and I know that there's been some strong feelings on this one from the beginning, but I really think that over the ensuing months that this has happened, that we've reached optimal. I think we should support it.
Okay. Any further discussion? If not, let's vote. All right. Councilwoman Fillmore.
Aye.
Councilwoman Meekum.
Aye.
Councilman McEwen.
Aye.
Councilwoman Ivy.
Aye.
And Councilman Ince.
Not much point. I'll say aye.
That motion passes 5-0. Darlene, please stay on the line for a moment. So I've followed this process, as y'all have, very closely for about 4 months now, and actually beyond that. And I also have been very involved in working with very different organizations in finding needs of the present residents there and trying to find relocation. And there's been some congressional offices have stepped up and ecclesiastical leaders, but CW has as well too. And I've had conversations with Darlene and also Colin many times to help find housing for those the biggest in need. Okay, and I know that was a very, as Councilman McEwen referred to, a very emotionally charged issue. And I commend Shailene as well and how she handled dealing with all those residents. Well, CW has stepped up to the plate as well too, to be a good citizen and helping in that regard as well too. So I know nothing's perfect, but I think that it's been a heart-wrenching thing, and that there has been care shown by all parties for the people and their needs as well too. And so I commend you for that. At the same time, Darlene, we hope that, I know drawings can be deceptive, but this council recently, we had some drawings that were changed on us, and I hope that, and I have confidence that you will stick to those drawings that have been rendered, and we'll get the product that's been voted on, because that's of critical importance. And thank you. I appreciate all that you've done, and the Planning Commission, the council, and all the community as a whole as well too. There's a lot of stories that people may never hear that have happened, in showing concern for the residents that are presently there. So thank you.
Mayor, I'd like to just also add a commendation to you for you very much went the extra mile in trying to reach out and see what could be done for those residents who are being displaced. So that's appreciated.
Thank you.
I agree with
I would second that comment.
Yeah, you've done a great job on this for a lot of our citizens, and I appreciate the time you've put in with them. And I appreciate the fact that CW has came up with this plan and has listened to the people. They said nothing's perfect, and I said when I started to ask questions, I had questions, but yet I was very impressed with the fact that they had listened to the people and came up with this a better plan than what it could have been.
I just want to say thank you as well. It's been probably the biggest learning experience of my 15-year career, and especially in 2020. And I do believe it's been the best example I've experienced of camaraderie in a community. I also recognize that it's not over, and that many residents need to transition, and what we do from here will be more critical than what happened from here. But I do believe our company is impeccable with our word and very transparent. And I continue to look forward to showing that to the mayor, the council, the PC, and most of all the community. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
And Darlene, I'm trusting that not only will we get the design, but because of what I have done with you and Colin, that those promises will be fulfilled with those residents as well.
Absolutely.
Because you're right, we do need to still complete this process.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Let's move to item number 4. This is a Whitaker Museum mobile tour agreement. And this is something that Lisa Summer, our Whitaker Museum director, initiated. Brent, did you want to talk about that? I don't see Lisa on the screen.
She's on here. She's unmuted. So I'll briefly introduce it and then hand it off to Lisa to describe a little bit more about what this entails. Lisa brought this project to me, I think a month or two ago, Lisa, right? The idea is with the Whitaker Museum shutdown, how can we still continue to have the residents involved and Whitaker involved with mobile tours outside of the Whitaker? And I think this is a fascinating idea. I've always been intrigued by, you know, when you go to Boston, I don't know if any of you have been to Boston, and you follow the red bricks right down to, you can go to all these different sites in Boston. Doing something like that in a community. You can't necessarily do that in Centerville. We don't have a lot of historical sites like Boston, but Lisa's kind of expanded this idea to incorporating more historical sites throughout our community. And this mobile tour is just a fascinating idea to bring history to life. So the thought is, of trying this agreement out with OnSell for a year to see what kind of participation we have and really focus on the marketing. And so that's the agreement before you. Now, my position, I've told you this before, this is something administratively I could approve, but anytime that I potentially commit the council to future expenditures, that I like to bring it before you. So when the budgets are prepared for future years, you know what to expect. So this does have an annual hosting fee of $588 at this point. But I'm gonna hand off to Lisa and talk a little bit more about how neat this product is.
Grant,
Okay.
has it changed any from when we did it last time?
Say again?
Because we already hashed through all of this and said, hey, we like it. And let's look at what the numbers are after the first year and see if we can continue because they're not tied into the contract.
If you don't
Do we
need to talk
more
about
than
it
that?
again, that's fine. We have talked about it, but you have the agreement before you now, and this is the official agreement that I'm bringing before you. So
Okay.
that's why I brought it before you, because we didn't have
Does
an agreement
anybody,
before.
does anybody need more than what we agreed to last time?
I
Is Lisa-
absolutely agree with
Is Lisa
Stephanie.
happy with the agreement?
I am here and I will answer any questions if anybody has any more questions concerned from the packet that you received and we talked about before.
This makes it
Lisa,
easy.
I don't mean to be rude to you, but I meant Lisa Romney.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, no problem. I apologize. I don't mean to be rude.
You're not.
Is
You're
there
not.
anything in the agreement, Lisa, that Lisa Romney, we need to be concerned about?
Yeah, Brant and I have reviewed that agreement and talked about a couple things. It is a one-page agreement, but it's only a $588 commitment here. And the one thing that we did change, they wanted kind of full authority on using marketing with the city's name. And so we did revise that provision to say that any kind of marketing requires city approval. Just because we didn't really want to get into having them
That's
use
what-
our name in a way that we were not aware of. So we have not had an opportunity, or I don't know, Brand, if you have to talk to them about that revision, but hopefully that will be acceptable to them. So you may want to say, subject to approval or, negotiations by staff on that clause.
Never okay in my standpoint to allow anybody free reign of our logo. And
Yeah.
so we want that approval, even if it makes the process a little bit longer. I don't want to lose that control of our logo. So
That's why we have you guys there, and good job on catching that sort of thing. And I agree with Stephanie. This is a great idea. It's a small cost. Let's go for it. So I would move that we approve the agreement with OnSell Service for exterior phone tour services for the Whitaker Museum. Leaving up to staff to negotiate the final language in the agreement.
I'd second it.
The motion is second, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
And one more comment for Lisa Summer. Lisa, I do understand that the Utah Storytelling Guild is working with the Arts and Heritage Foundation and Story Crossroads to produce something like this that's statewide. So you can go to historical sites in Fillmore. And so I don't know if you're aware of that, but you may want to check that out and see what they're doing. And if you can dovetail into that, they may be able to offer you some voice talent or something like that to help out.
Wonderful. Thank you. And I'm finding that we have more history in Centerville all the time. Have you guys seen the movie League of Their Own with Tom Hanks and the women's baseball team?
Yeah.
Anyhow, the original picture from the original team is from Centerville. She was a Randall. She was married to Tom Randall. So there you go.
Well, that's fun.
She was portrayed in the movie. Okay, thanks you guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Take care.
right. Thank you. That was a quick, easy item. I like those easy ones. Thank you.
All right, item number 5. This is a memorandum of understanding with Davis County for ballot box at Davis County Library in Centerville. Lisa, anything you want to tell us on this?
No, just briefly, you have before you a memorandum of understanding between Davis County and Centerville City, because Davis County would like to put a more permanent ballot box at the library in Centerville. This is coming to Centerville because we have a lease agreement with the county. You know, we own the property where the library is located. And so if you review the lease agreement, it says that any use other than specific library use requires approval of the city. So they're just coming to us to make sure they're following the lease agreement and obtaining city approval to put a ballot box at the library. Again, we reviewed this. It's a pretty simple agreement. We did add, the county prepared this, and we did add a couple provisions to require them to comply with all other terms of the lease agreement, and also that they're responsible for any liability associated with the ballot box there and restoring the property if they ever remove the ballot box. So with that, staff is recommending approval of the memorandum of understanding for the ballot box at the Davis County Library.
And
Does
also,
this replace the ballot box at the city?
from what I understand, yes, it does. They did take the ballot box. It's no longer here that we had, that we'd placed in the lobby. It's no longer here. So my understanding is it does replace the ballot box here.
And there were always some ADA issues with our parking lot, just in the way it's been constructed. So this is probably a better location in terms of compliance with the ADA.
And based on this conversation, just to let you know, Curtis and I have reignited the conversation about swapping land. So we're going to start pushing that a little bit more with the Reed Smith Park land and the library property are similar in size, 1.54 acres to 1.59 acres. So we're going to be looking at possibly bringing a land swap to you. We'll be looking at those terms. So the library can go to the county and then we can own the entire park here at Reed Smith. So
That would make so much sense.
It would have robbed us of this opportunity to do this motion to approve the memorandum of understanding with Davis County. I mean, we would have been robbed of that.
Alas.
I think it's tongue in cheek notwithstanding, I think it's important that we post something at City Hall about the location of the ballot box.
we absolutely will. And in fact, it doesn't even stop there. I will be speaking with Brian, the elections officer, to see still what we can do to have some ballot box here, to be honest with you. I think it is important that we still have some sort of tie-in with that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Well, I'll motion that we approve the memorandum of understanding.
I second it.
Go ahead, Bill, you can have it.
All right, I second it. Sorry.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Oh, great. And thank you, Brant, for filling that in. Brant and I had talked about that. And I said, I like the idea of potentially of having a ballot box still at the city. And then we talked about that land swap as well, too. So I commend Brant for thinking to initiate that talk with Curtis. So, all right. Where are we? We're at item number 6. This is appointment of deputy city recorder. This was initiated by Brant. He and I talked about it briefly, but Brant, you want to go in a little bit further?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Due to the abandonment of Leah Romero from her post as city recorder, sorry, Leah, I'm just kidding. We're really excited for Leah, but it has created, a little bit of some logistical issues that we need to address here at the city. Leah, we're grateful. I'm grateful for her. She's already started her new position, but she's still going to help us out, which is going to be a little bit of work on her, but I really appreciate her. And we're going to try and get a number of duties removed from her as quickly as possible. The one item that I've asked Leah to continue to help us out with is definitely our city council meetings through the end of the month. But those other duties that she had, which were many, we do need to find someone here that's at City Hall to assist with those duties and responsibilities, such as attesting our documents and receiving the phone calls and just kind of moving the paperwork around between the mayor and myself or vendors and things like that. So what we'd like to do is I've met with Jennifer Hansen and asked if she'd be willing to take on some of those responsibilities for a short term. She's a part-time employee. Rec is a little slow right now, but in the interim, we can increase her hours for a short period of time and give her some of those duties. And she has agreed and is really excited about that. For example, one item that needs to go out is the newsletter. which is a time-consuming effort. We don't have anyone to help us get a newsletter put together for this month, but Jennifer is really excited to help out with that. So what we'd like to do, and we don't have a position created, technically Deputy City Recorder, but what we'd like to do is pass this resolution to make Jennifer a Deputy City Recorder, that she's able to attest those documents and provide some of the services of the City Recorder in a short period of time, for the short time until we're able to hire the new City Recorder.
Any questions for Brent or myself?
And what's the time frame that you're hoping for?
Great question. Yeah, so I was going to discuss that a little bit more in my city manager report, but this is a good time as well. October 16th, the position closes. I hope to do the interviews the following week, and hopefully we get a person in place early to mid-November at the latest. So we need someone quick. And we already have 7 applications, and they're really strong applications. There's a few that are really strong. So
good news.
It's great news. Leah's irreplaceable. We can't replace Leah, but we're going to do our best. So.
And she's professional to the end. She didn't mute you in the middle of your diatribe there. She has power to do that.
I'm sure she's cursing me, going like this, shaking her fist.
Good motion that we approve resolution 2020-29 for the Deputy City Recorder position.
Second.
Oh, motion is second. Any further discussion? If not, let's, this is a roll call vote. Councilwoman Meekum.
Aye.
Councilman McEwen.
Aye.
Councilwoman Ivy.
Aye.
Councilman Ince.
Aye.
And Councilwoman Fillmore.
Aye.
I appreciate Brent for doing this, and I appreciate Janet for being excited, because I had some concerns, and I talked with Brent. I said, until we get somebody hired, there's still some things we'd like to get done. He addressed some of those. So thank you, everyone. All right, let's go to item number 7. Now, this is the summary calendar. There's 3 items on the summary calendar: the Cope subdivision bond reduction end of warranty period, the Island View change order, and the new phone system, enabling remote access using CARES Act money, and the Bears Cove subdivision bond reduction and start of warranty period. Do we have any concerns or questions on any of these items on summary action?
I just have a question of clarification on this change order for Island View. Is this something that we were planning on, and it was already subtracted when we were stating the number of the additional contingency that we have, or is this minusing? Is this being subtracted from that number? Is this 33,000 eating into the contingency that we last said we had?
Go ahead, Bruce.
It is using up your contingency, yes.
And so then after this, how much contingency will we have left?
I'm not sure. Brent, do you know that?
So I've asked Mike Wannenberg to put together, because essentially this should be closing out the project, if I'm not mistaken, Bruce, other than maybe a couple of items. So part of your packet, I asked Mike to put together for your reference, the total cost of the project, which remaining funds available according to the spreadsheet on Novus is $55,000.
Okay. And so then my only other question is, were we going to have a follow-up report or conversation about some of the ideas that we talked about the other night, like for instance, a netting system behind the volleyball?
Yes. Yeah. So this is going to be an ongoing, this is going to be one of those multiple phase projects. And yes, the ideas presented using these funds. Again, those funds are coming from the real property lease, or actually at this point, and Jacob's on the call as well, but I believe these remaining funds would be our RAP tax dollars. We've exhausted all of the other funding mechanisms. So this 55,000 is just RAP tax. So we can use them anytime. Does that make sense? So we took out the maximum from the Zion's lease that we could? We had, I think, $19,000 plus or minus left. And with that, I believe we can draw down some more. Jacob, can you answer that?
Yeah, it's about 20,000 now. That's about all we got left.
So we'll draw down the remainder of that for this change order as much as possible. And then after that, then we're dipping into our RAP tax dollars.
Okay, so that will just be part of the general Parks and Rec priority list discussions.
So now as we're doing projects going forward, those are budget items that you'll see Bruce potentially present at future budget discussions where he'd like to have those nets, and we'd be drawing from those dollars.
Great, thanks. That was the only question I had. Otherwise, I'd be ready to vote on the summary action calendar.
I was going to ask for a little more detail about the phones. Are we comfortable? Is this fabulous? It looks like a lot of money every month for phone service.
Well, to give you a little background, Stephanie, we are paying $15,400 right now. So it is comparable. And actually, Moreo came back to us and said that they're anticipating an increase here soon. How much of an increase, I'm not quite sure, but it's going to be very similar to what we're paying now. Sorry, did I say 15? I meant 1,500.
I was going to say, okay.
Sorry about that, Mayor.
Say, wow, we've got amazing phones.
Yeah, I was going to say, Councilwoman Ivy, look at that savings.
Yeah.
So we're really excited about the phone system. It gives us an opportunity. There's an app on my phone. We've had some issues trying to forward homes working from home. What it does is it just is going to make me work even more hours because I'll have easy access to the phone system and people can call me anytime. So, but it's the convenience. And to be honest, we were pretty far behind on our telephone system. We were pretty archaic and we're limited. This now gives us a far greater option and the cost is very minimal in relation to the monthly cost. So we're pretty
how
excited.
secure do we feel that it is?
We feel it's very secure. So one item, I asked Lisa Bednarz to reach out to other organizations who are using this system, and they all rave and they love the system. And these organizations are much, much larger than ours. And they feel secure because security is a big thing for us as well, since it's cloud-based.
All right,
is it perfect? I mean, Councilor McKeown's got he's got the look on his face where he's like, it's not that secure. He's trying to hack it right now.
It's a phone system. Right.
It's a phone system. So anyway, but we feel pretty good about this system. We're excited. We had 3 vendors, pitch their ideas. This one stood out to be the best as far as options and cost.
All right.
I would make a motion that we approve all of the items A through D on the summary action calendar.
Second that with roll call vote.
We have a motion by Councilwoman Fillmore, a second by Councilman McEwen. All in favor, aye.
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 Opposed? Appears to be
I'd like to do it as a roll call because of the dollar amount.
That's a lot of money.
Oh, okay. I'll do a roll call vote. That'll make Lisa happier.
Yes.
As well. Councilwoman Ivy.
Aye.
Councilman Ince.
Aye.
Councilwoman Fillmore.
Aye.
Councilwoman Meekum.
Aye.
And Councilman McEwen.
Aye.
That motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Item number 8, minutes review and acceptance from the September 15th closed session, September 15th work session, and the September 15th City Council. Any changes to those minutes? If not, is there a motion to approve them?
Make a motion to approve the minutes as posted.
I'll second that.
We got a motion to second. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Next item is City Council report. This council meeting, it happens to be Councilmember McEwen's turn. Councilmember McEwen, what do you have to do for us?
This is where I'm going to offer like a magician's misdirection and motion that we go into the RDA to deal with the business there, or adjourn the City Council to adjourn the RDA, deal with the business in the RDA, and come back to the City Council. Nobody wanted to go with that misdirection? That's the best I had.
Is that because you're afraid we're going to ask about the mosquitoes?
Yes.
You can ask about the mosquitoes and I'll tell you all about them. That's easy.
They have extra itch poison in them right now.
But they're not our West Nile virus carriers. We've had an extra large hatch because of the warm temperatures, and the conditions have been ideal to hatch a lot of mosquitoes late in the season, which it's not normal that we would see them this late. Well, as you all know, we're like 10 degrees over average anyway. So, yep, they're out there. Not a lot to report between the last report and now. Everything continues to look good at the mosquito district. Of course, we still have the positive cases of West Nile that come out both in the state and in the nation, but those efforts have been so eclipsed by what's going on with COVID that people aren't even paying attention to that right now. But I do want to offer my thanks to Gary Hatch, our manager for the Mosquito Abatement District. He did a really good job scrambling for things early on in the pandemic that you wouldn't even think of, like just the plastics used for doing the individual samples, doing the testing. We have a lab that we approved at the Mosquito Abatement District, but you entered into this interesting phase where all of the plastics that would be used for PCR testing were getting taken up inside COVID efforts. But our manager was smart enough to recognize that was going to be a problem and did some good negotiations to make sure that we had the materials necessary to perform the functions. We're struggling as a district a little bit in that one of the things that has been a struggle for us is the pilot who does our flying. We've got a new pilot who's not as good as the old pilot. The old pilot would still continue to fly, except for he's dealing with some health issues. So fortunately, these are coming to us as the season is winding down. So we'll be looking for probably some new help on that in next spring. That's one of the things that, again, our manager's done a great job on, is he's looked at alternative technologies. We have drone technology. It doesn't replace an airplane. Can't cover the same square footage or square acreage as in the drone that you can in an airplane, but we are looking forward to the solutions that are coming up. So that's the report that I have. And now I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn the city council to go to RDA to deal with the pressing business with the intent to return to the city council.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, let's go over to RDA. I think we stay on the same channel. All right, appears that we have all our directors here: Director Ince, Director Fillmore, Director Meekum, Director McEwen, and Director Ivy. All are present. And so I will start this meeting as well again with in accordance with Utah Code 52-4-2074 of the Utah Open and Public Meeting Act. I have determined that conducting an electronic meeting of the Centerville Redevelopment Agency with an anchor location presents a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who may be present at the anchor location. This determination is based on the facts and circumstances surrounding the COVID-19 pandemic. Considering the continued number of COVID-19 case counts in Utah, meeting in an anchor location presents substantial risk to the health and safety of those in attendance because physical distancing measures may be difficult to maintain at City Hall. Thank you, everyone. So our item on the RDA meeting tonight is approve real estate purchase and funding for Randall property. What more Brent, do we need to say on this than what we already have been told about in the past?
Yeah, so this is the agreement for you, and just to give you a procedural update on how we're going to proceed with this. So what we have is the RDA funds are being used to purchase the property, which is allowed through the RDA to acquire park property. The agreement to acquire these park property and be used for park facility, as a park facility. So what we intend on doing essentially in this meeting is the motion that's before you is the recommended motion. So what we're going to do is take that motion, transfer the funds from the RDA to the Park Capital Improvement Fund, and the Capital Park Improvement Fund will be making the purchase to acquire the property. And so October 20th, we'll have before you a budget amendment with those items and the actual agreement for approval to be approved by the city council for that purchase. Does that make sense? So there's different ways we could have approached this, but this is kind of the way that we felt that would be probably the best, most beneficial. Jacob did state we more likely could approve the agreement in the RDA and transfer the park later, but I like the idea of coming back to you on the 20th with a budget amendment in both items. So we're doing it all at one time. So this is essentially the RDA. As the RDA, you're approving that transfer of funds to purchase the property for $300,000 plus expenses. Those expenses will include the phase 1 assessment, the closing costs, last year's property taxes, those other items that we have discussed previously.
This doesn't have to be in a closed meeting.
No, now we're approving it. So,
and I asked if we be just a little more specific and say it's from the parish gateway.
That's correct. Thank you. Thank you, Jacob.
I would like to say thank you to our staff who's worked so hard on this with the family. And I know that, you know, without us having the realtor and everything, a lot of you put in a lot of time, and I appreciate that very much.
Yes, Lisa was awesome. She did great.
Thank you, everyone. So we need a motion.
I'd make a motion that we approve the purchase of the Randall property at 285 North 100 East with funds from the Parish Gateway RDA fund.
I second that.
Motion and a second. We'll do a roll call vote. Director Ince.
Aye.
Director Fillmore.
Aye.
Director Meekum.
Aye.
Director McEwen.
Aye.
And Director Ivy.
Aye.
Okay, great. That motion passes 5-0. Look for a motion to adjourn RDA meeting and return to city council meeting.
So moved.
So moved.
I'll second Bill's so moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Great. All right, we're back to city council. On city council, we're next at mayor's report. First thing, is for those of you that don't know, I will just update you with the Legacy Trails Improvement Project is beginning October 12th and lasting until November 7th. Work will take place generally Monday to Friday to 7 to 5:30. Northbound lane closures from 7 to 2 p.m. After 2 p.m. crews will continue working the shoulder 5:30 p.m. with no lane closure. I guess we'll get this out to our residents so they know, but you can, if you would like to receive updates on this, you can reply to this email. I can send you the email or send an email to legacytrailupdates@utah.gov. So just construction that's taking place on the Legacy Trail. Second thing, since we had a COG meeting, their main thing that came out of that, and I passed this information on to Brent, and he was aware of it, was some grant opportunities that may or may not apply to us. Had a chamber meeting, yearly annual chamber meeting where the chamber heard from all the mayors. This was a Zoom meeting, all the mayors in the county. Specifically, they just wanted updates about what was happening in our city and specifically economic development. I talked about the Hive project going on. Talked about other building projects that were taking place as well too. We had a fire board meeting, and in that fire board meeting, Councilman Ince, I asked if there would be any further funding that we would be approving. And Chief said at that time he did not see that there would be. So you had asked that question before. I met with some people from Parks and Rec, Lynn Keddington and David Gardner, about some ideas they had as far as funding for pickleball courts and Parks and Rec Committee, and also the Community Foundation, who wants to help it out in that regard, is going to be following up on some of that. The Community Foundation has a meeting tomorrow at 5 p.m. Met with a number of mayors and the Chamber of Commerce to meet a congressional candidate, not from our district, but Blake Moore, who won the Republican nomination. And I'm willing to meet with the Democratic candidate too, but I haven't heard a call from them. I think it's important that I do as much as I can in staying in contact, because I have reached out to many of our federal congressmen and senators in the last couple months, especially. So we had a chance to meet with him and ask him about some of his stances on issues. Walktober is something that is going on in the community where we're encouraging people. I don't know if anyone's seen it yet, but we tried to get calendars out, mark on your calendar of how much walking you're doing per month with city council or youth council was supposed to be finding some prizes for people that submit those and that have received prizes at the end of the month, trying to get people out active and on their own and walking and being active. Let's see. I apologize. I will not bring the name for tonight because I did not get you out a resume of a planning commissioner, but I will do that and we'll approve that next meeting. So you have a chance to look over that. And then the last thing, and I left this for last so we can go into the city manager's report. Maybe he can give us some update on this, put you on the spot, Brad, is Senator Romney called me. We talked for about 10 minutes and he specifically talked about the disaster of the storm. And I asked him about contact at his office regarding FEMA. I don't know that we qualify for FEMA money or not. I've asked Brent to assimilate all the expenses that we've had, and maybe he can give us an update of where we're at on that. So that was a whole bunch. I tried to consult.
Can I interrupt for half a second, Mayor?
What's that?
Can I interrupt for half a second?
You betcha.
I have asked the Community Core Council to provide the equivalent that we've provided in the past about hours worked and damages incurred by individuals through the city.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that. Appreciate that. That's all I had, unless you guys had any questions for me. Okay. If not, Brent, city manager's report.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I do have a fourth item now. I do have 3 items, and I will. Jacob is still on the call. We actually met with FEMA on Thursday. Jacob and Jolene did. I was not involved in that meeting, so I'll go through my 3 items and then defer to Jacob about the FEMA update. First item is just to give you an update. We have hired Performance Electronics to do the council chambers upgrade. It's a hybrid system that will involve us being able to work with people via Zoom, via phone call, or in person. We are currently not equipped to do a hybrid type system right now. After meeting with Councilmember McEwen, who gave us some great ideas on what to pursue, Performance Electronics, who has a state contract, is ready to go. We have received a preliminary bid on that, and that will be used. CARES Act funding will be used to make those upgrades. It will take some time. It won't be happening in the next 30 days, to much of Mayor's chagrin. It's going to take some time before we're able to get that up and going, but we are moving as quickly as possible. City recorder process, we discussed that briefly a moment ago. I propose we still use the same interview panel with Councilmember Meekum. Are there any concerns from this council about that? I really appreciate her insight, and since she was involved in the first process, she has a really good idea of what we're looking for. And I think her insight will be valuable on that panel once again. So with that, applications close the 16th. I'll be working with Councilmember McEwen to figure out, Meekum, to figure out the schedule and when we can do those interviews. The sooner the better. If it closes the 16th, I would love to start interviews on the 19th. to be honest with you. So we'll get that process going as quickly as possible. Mark Marchant sent me an email. He did an assessment of our sidewalks. I know this has been a topic, a conversation we've had in the past on sidewalk repair and maybe what that does to trees in the park strip. He has identified 36 trees that have fallen during the windstorm out of the park strip. And so he was just trying to identify, the process going forward. And I think at this point, based on the direction we received in the staff or in the past for staff, we'll continue to pursue those areas, the vertical faults that are the most liability to the city. And if there are any trees that are still remaining, for example, if 2 trees fell in a park strip and there's still 1 remaining and that resident would like that last one removed, at the homeowner's request, that tree will be removed. I'm trying to avoid using this $100,000 that we have set aside for removing trees. I really want it to be focused on sidewalk repair and not necessarily tree removal at this point. I've asked Mark to put together a list of faults that were at the 3.5, 4 inch range. That to me is not necessarily a tree policy in the park strip. That's more of a huge liability issue for us as a city and whether that tree may need to be removed. So I've asked him to put together that list. If there's a handful of trees, we'll come back before you in the future with those trees, along with pictures to show you where our concerns are for liability and discuss how that might go forward. But as of right now, using the funding just to address those sidewalks. Councilmember Ivy?
Are those specific to the park strip? Because I can tell you about some that are not in the park strip that are causing faults of that size.
That's a good point. I mean, that's a different discussion. I mean, if it's behind the curb, if it's behind the sidewalk, it's the resident's property at that point. So it's a different conversation. Park strip is city property. So again, I don't necessarily want to get into that direction at this point, but
those 36 trees.
So we're just painting those very bad faults, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, those 36 trees, they caused new faults, or just 36 trees came out of park strip. So I wasn't clear on the way you worded that.
yeah, sorry about that. So I don't know. I don't have any clarification for that in terms of, the trees, when I was driving around, you obviously saw trees damaging sidewalks as they were falling. Nonetheless, there are sidewalk sections that need to be replaced. Trees were nearby in the location, whether it was a pre-existing fault or if it's a new fault. But nonetheless, we'll start using the funds, limited funds we have to start addressing those faults. Just want to give you a heads up. So if there's any trees being removed, the only trees that are going to be removed at this point are homeowner requests. We will not be removing any trees that we've deemed unsafe. We will come to you with those trees that we deem unsafe to allow you to have input in that process. Okay. And then finally, so the FEMA update. Jacob, will you hop on and give an update on the FEMA discussion, as well as FM Global and all the work they've done as well?
Yeah. So Jolene met with the FEMA representative last Thursday. She's been our point here at the city and collecting information. And right now, all FEMA has is some soft numbers of what the damage is, and they're trying to collect the total for the area, the region. We've been working with FM Global. Our representative didn't show up until Friday, and then I believe Monday morning for the parks, but she's done her part. She's submitted. Then again, she said these are soft numbers. We gave those to FEMA. For your information, it was just over $200,000 in damage on city property. Of course, the discussions will be ongoing. We're lumped in with the other cities nearby. There's some that are still doing quite a bit of cleanup, and it'll be a while before they get their final numbers, Farmington being one of them, working with FEMA. So as soon as I find out more information, maybe the best thing for me to do is send out an email to all of you, let you know what's being updated, how much closer we're getting to some kind of resolution. We still have invoices coming in as well for services that were rendered during the cleanup from almost a month ago.
So the $200,000 that you mentioned, does that include the refuse removal from the 5 pickup sites?
No, that is just actual damage done by trees, wind to the buildings, the parks, and our trees on our lots. So that
Do you
doesn't
have any kind of a feel for what the refuse removal was?
No, not yet. Not yet.
And we're not done in the parks quite at all, are we? I mean, I know the community still has lots of stuff in it. So how much more do we anticipate in terms of time before we're going to be able to tally up those final numbers and be done with our cleanup?
For us, I think we're a little over a week away for us. But as far as FEMA coming back to us and the decision that they've made and how we're going to proceed, I still think we're quite a few weeks away from doing that. I'm not saying a month, I'm saying we're a few weeks away.
Yeah, there was a story that Farmington is going to take, or that Kaysville may take them the rest of the year to get cleaned up.
Yeah, and you saw Salt Lake City ask the National Guard to come back and continue to help them clean up just recently.
I think it's because we've got more chainsaws per capita, Bill. I don't know what that says, but we seem to clean up pretty good.
And fucking trailers.
And a lot of practice.
Well, it was helpful that Bruce did have that contact with the group that goes around, and they came down and what was it, Bruce? Five or six people with chainsaws came and helped for free, and just, which is great. We have connections, which is really good, that helped us out as well. With that, I don't have anything else to report unless you have questions for me. Wonderful.
Okay. Thank you, Brent. Hey, so one last thing from me. I wanted this to be separate from the dozen or so things I went through. I want to acknowledge, and I've taken a personal privilege here since I'm a CPA and a finance guy, acknowledge our finance department. In your packet, you'll see that they received the Award of Financial Reporting Achievement from the Government Finance Officers Association, United States and Canada, Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting for its presented Centerville City for its comprehensive annual financial report for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2019. This is many years running. I appreciate Jake. I appreciate and all that he works with. I mean, they're not out there necessarily on the front line of physical danger, but they are on the front line of financial danger. And we appreciate all they've done, and that we received this recognition again. And Jacob, I said, yeah, get that out there to the press. And who'd you tell, Jake? The Clipper?
Yeah, it should be in the Clipper next week.
So we just appreciate them, and hats off to them, and congratulations again. So how many years running now, Jake?
Well, this is my fourth one, but the city's been getting it for, I don't know, I've got a huge box full of plaques.
Yeah.
They've been coming for a long time.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, I do want to commend also Jacob and the team. This, just so this council's aware, not every city pursues this, but what it does is there's certain requirements you have to have, and really it touts transparency. So cities that don't pursue this, they're not as transparent and not, well, budget document, I can give you a Cassell line item budget, but what does that really mean to you? But Jacob putting together the numbers and pie charts and helping it be easily readable by our residents, it does make a big difference. And so pursuing it does take more staff time to put something together to get this achievement. So I appreciate Jacob and staff taking the time to do that, and be as transparent as possible for our residents.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
And along those lines, Jake, you had the audit, the auditors were in a couple of weeks ago, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And
Yep. We're continuing.
Proceeding forward. Any date of when they're going to be done with it?
They're supposed to be done by the end of October.
Okay. Great.
So you'll hear from them probably the first meeting in November.
Okay. Thank you. Great. I look for a motion then. We do have an item that we need to go in closed session on. So I look for a motion for adjournment from City Council to go to closed session, not to return.
Motion to adjourn City Council meeting, moving into a closed session with no intent to return to City Council.
Second that.
In the closed session for the purpose of.
Yes, please. Thank you.
For the purpose of discussing
Character
the
and
character.
professional competency of an individual.
Yeah.
Okay. Who seconded that?
I did.
Robin did.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Great. Council meeting's adjourned.
We take about a 3-minute break in between.
Yes, let's have a little break.